Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the second decan of Leo. Hope that you're having a wonderful afternoon out there. We're going to do some things a little bit differently today. In solidarity with the national general strike, no advertisements in the beginning. Ads are turned off. There's a link in the description of this video for mutualaidhub.org if you want to contribute to mutual aid organizations in your area. We're just going to be spending some time together. I know that this has been a rough couple weeks for people, and today I'd like to hold some space for you. I'd like to help you understand what's going on in the stars and the sky that might be contributing. Talk about some of the issues that we're facing in our communities. Talk about it. Hold some space and empathy for what you're experiencing. I'd like to hear your stories too. So if you're joining me today, please let me know if you're here in the chat. And I hope that you're safe. I hope that you are staying centered, because it's a lot going on right now. A lot going on in our communities, a lot going on around the world. And I'll try to contextualize it the best that I can. But really appreciate you being here today. And yeah, we'll do our best to break it down. And but don't be shy about sharing your experiences today. This is one of the things that I want to help open up this space for. For those of you who are kind of unaware, there's a national general strike that's happening today. I scheduled this live stream before I understood what was all going on with this, so I had some mixed emotions about whether I should come on to this platform and do this today, but ultimately decided it was better for me to show up and just have some community time. Again, turn the ads off on the video. Don't necessarily need the big corporation like YouTube or Google to benefit from this today. If you do want to make a donation, there is a mutualaidhub.org link in the description of this video. And no advertisements from me here today. So let's welcome some new friends here today. Welcome, friends. Thank you for stopping by. Cosmic Rose is here. What's up, Rose? Says, rawr. I love it. Yeah, we're going to have to learn how to share our most authentic selves, our lion hearts, our courage. So I think a good roar to start us off today, Rose. Maru is here. What's up, Maru? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. In Germany via Argentina. Hope everything's going well with you, my friend. Leanne is here. Says hello from the UK. Hope everyone is well. We're hanging in there. There's a lot going on, but hanging in there, Leanne, and appreciate you being here. Taku is here. Says hi, Spencer's greeting from Germany. Hope you are doing well. I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. There's some things going on in my community, Taku, and some other communities in our in the Midwest. A lot of stuff going on in Minnesota, Minneapolis, but I got to tell you, friends, in my neighborhood in Southeast Michigan, some similar things are starting to happen. So it's wild times. Devin is here. Says good afternoon, Spencer. Good afternoon, Devin. Hope that you're doing well, my friend, over there in Portland. And maybe we'll have some good putting together, melding of the minds today, friend. Okay. So yes, if you're here, let me know you're here. Let's have some solidarity today and be able to work this out as a community. Well, we're talking about the full moon. So again, if you're just joining me a little bit late, no advertisements today. No pushing of anything. This is a day of general strike where people are walking out of their jobs. People are not purchasing anything. This is an important thing. This is a great day to either contribute or donate to some of your local mutual aid networks, immigration support networks, etc. But don't purchase things from the big corporations today. And in that spirit, we've turned off the advertisements here today. No announcements in that regard. We'll just talk astrology and share our stories with one another. So full moon in Leo. Full moon in Leo. We are coming to a full moon this weekend where we are going to be kind of taking a look at this full moon on Sunday. I'm going to share my screen and you can see it a little bit here. So this is a full moon, February the 1st, 2026, which is Sunday. at 5:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from my location of Ypsilanti, Michigan. A lot of planets in Aquarius. We have both Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Pluto all co-present with the Sun. Okay. We have this full moon making a big square to Uranus. Not as tight as the upcoming eclipse that we're going to be experiencing, but I think that it's close enough by a whole sign that we're going to be feeling the squaring energy of that. We are experiencing a lot of identity crises, I think, with this full moon. I know that this has been part of my personal experience and part of the experience I've heard from my conversations with a lot of people in my circles. This week, I met up with a number of neighbors, trying to figure out what our response might be if ice comes to our neighborhood, which it has. We in my area of Ypsilanti, Michigan, we had parents of students from our high school that's about 3 blocks away from my house, taken from their bus stops while they're waiting to pick up their children. And those types of events, it's horrifying. And it's horrifying to watch them when they're not immediately in your backyard, and it's horrifying to experience them when they are. And I think there's a lot of us here with this full moon are starting to ask ourselves, what are we going to do? What can we do about this? Who are we going to be in the face of a rapidly changing world, in the face of oppression, in the face of of violence, state-sponsored violence? Who are we going to be in the face of that? And I think that this is a pivotal moment as we have Neptune that has moved into Aries this week, where we are going to be asked to take on new roles, new identities, to become an authentic version of ourselves. That an authenticity I would define as being the same outside that you feel inside. Many of us who do this work, who do metaphysical work, who do astrological readings, who do any work where we're facing the public, there's a certain amount of masking that I think people are inclined to do, right? There's a lot of I don't know. A lot of people have been trained over the course of their life not to rock the boat, not to say things that are inflammatory, myself included. I will tell you, I had a lot of conversations with some people in my family this week, and I'm realizing through my upbringing that there was an avoidance of confrontation, that there was a sweeping under the rug of difficult topics to maintain an illusion of security and an illusion of safety. And I think that the masks are off, right, on that level. The types of stories that we accepted as truth in our youth, in our families, within our relationships to one another, they are being dismantled. And at one point, those truths might have been useful. They may have been a way to organize our worlds to help us get through the day. They may not have all been based on truth or fact. But I think that there comes moments where the stories, the collective stories that we share as a community need to change. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about with this full moon, as far as how do we craft identities moving forward, is when we are faced with new information, when we're faced with visuals that we can't deny, right? Rather, even though we have people who try to gaslight us into not believing our eyes. When we're faced with those new realizations and that new energy, how do we respond, right? How do we dismantle some of the prior held misconceptions that we may have had and move forward with the new information? There's a lot of those things happening right now. And it can be really disorientating. It can be really confusing. It can be really unsettling. It can make you feel out of whack, out of center. It can make you really question a lot of things about what you've, the assumptions that you've made over the course of your life. And I think that the spirit of what I want to come to this talk today is the spirit of starting to ask those harder questions. Now, those of you who have followed along with my channel, hopefully you understand that I don't shy away from these things completely, that I try to talk some truth to power. I've been very critical of oligarchs. I've been very critical of our economic system and how unjust and unfair it is. But I think that one thing I've been guilty of in the past, due to some of just my own discomfort at conflict that I'm learning that I was taught, it's something that we get taught, right? Is sometimes I'll try to say things in a roundabout way, in a coded way. And I think really the time for that, as Neptune moves into Aries and Saturn is moving into Aries, I think the time for that is over. I think the time to be very true to what you believe and to say it very clearly is really important. And I know that a lot of folks don't want to alienate their audience and things of that nature. And I think we kind of have to start to be more honest with each other about how we feel. And I mean, if it wasn't clear already, like I don't support what immigration is doing in this country. I don't support ICE. I don't support the deportation of immigrants without due process. I don't support really the assumption that we have any more rights than any other human being on the earth that we inhabit together by mere virtue of the place and station that we were born into. I think that's a huge illusion and a mistake. And how do we start telling a new story where human beings are seen as equals to one another, where human beings are seen as equal to the other forms of life that we inhabit on this planet? In addition to some of these things that I've been seeing just throughout the news, I've also been watching a lot of nature documentaries recently. I had a suggestion from a beautiful community member here, my friend Rachel, who turned me on to Ocean by David Attenborough. I can highly recommend David Attenborough's Ocean documentary. And a lot of it was horrifying, talking about bottom trawlers and how they completely destroy ocean ecosystems. But there was also some hope within that as well, showing just how resilient something like the ocean can be if we just allow it to be, right? If we just allow it to heal. And it gave me a lot of hope. And, it got me down kind of a nature documentary jag. Like where I was last night, my partner and I watched a documentary called Beavers. Amazing at how beautiful and productive they are in their environments, and how much compassion and care they have for each other. It's kind of incredible how we can take these kind of ideas where we're trying to find justice and fairness for each other as human beings, but also take it a step further and take it a step further with other forms of life on the planet. So those are the big questions that I've been asking. And I've been having tough conversations with people in my life who maybe are a little bit more comfortable based on their circumstances, and starting to challenge those deeply held ideas of comfort. I've had people in my family recently where they get to a certain point where their uncomfortability starts to be touched, right? Their nerves of like, oh man, ideally I like these ideas you're talking about, but if it means that I have to give up some of my own comfort, then they'll start to push back on it. And I think we have to start holding the people in our lives accountable for that. And I think that we need to allow ourselves to be a little bit more uncomfortable than we've been in the past. So these are some of the opening kind of ideas and statements that I have around this full moon. Again, I think that overall, the astrology suggests that we are attempting to make a transition from one point to the next, from one shore to the next. The decan of Aquarius, where the sun is in, and Venus are suggesting that we are in a point of transition where we are attempting to move on from an old story and move towards a different future. The old narrative, the old mythology, we can't uphold it any longer. We can't gaslight ourselves into believing that it is a just way of organizing a society. And that's a really powerful moment. It's a vulnerable moment. But again, with the opposition with the moon at 13 degrees of Leo, it's a moment of understanding what your role within that could possibly be. Now, everyone's role could be different. There are some people that are, frontline people that want to get out on the streets and want to make their voice heard in that regard. There are other people that are educators. There are other people that are organizers. All of these things, there is a role for everyone in the new way of thinking about an organized society. So we'll talk about some of that today, and I would love to hear some of your ideas on that. I'm going to just check in with the chat again because there's some nice people stopping in I want to acknowledge. Devin says, happy Emolk to those who celebrate. Yeah, we're coming up on Emolk this weekend, aren't we? The cross holiday that is represented by the kind of the middle degrees of Aquarius, where it's basically a holiday where the energy underneath the surface is stirring. There was a time where the ewes were pregnant, and we're not necessarily seeing the motion of spring yet, but we've got these stirrings that we should pay attention to. Rose says, last week it hit me and said, we just had the parting of the Red Sea. Things are now changed forever. They definitely are. Or this is just a moment where things have been building to this for a long time. As we learn in cycles of astrology, it's never just one moment. It's a series of moments that is painted onto a canvas. But there are turning points that are, I think, more poignant than others, and we're definitely at one of those. Kitty Lady is here. Kia ora from New Zealand. Nice to see you, Karen. Hope everything's going well your way on the other side of the world. It's going to take a global community to make these changes. This is not just an American issue. This is not just a European issue. This is a global issue. This is a global point where we have to decide, are we going to help each other? Take into account the externalization of costs. I want to talk about this today. I think this is really important. Externalities is something I'm learning a lot about in my attempt to explore a new way of thinking about an organization of our economic society. And one of the things that Americans in particular have really been blind to, whether willfully or through ignorance or ananke, is the externalization of costs of our lifestyles, and the externalization of violence, the externalization of exploitation of land. We export that. We export violence. We export pollution. We export the turning of the common resources of other countries into things that can be imported back to our country, and then create the infrastructure of debt for other countries so that they're constantly in debt slavery and can't use their own natural resources to feed their own people. And that is a problem And that's something that needs to be reckoned with. We need to start having an internalization of costs. And this is what I love about seeing our international friends here, because this is an opportunity to talk about this from not just an American perspective, to talk about these issues from a global perspective, to be able to get rid of our blind spots. Because when you hear someone else's story and say, you know what, this is how the actions that you're taking are affecting me from a completely different perspective, a different part of the world, that's powerful. Because when we actually take the time to listen to each other, we can come up with solutions that can benefit everyone instead of just our own individual perspectives. John's here. What's up, John? Nice to see you, John. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. We're going to talk some astrology today. We're going to try to make some sense of what's going on in our worlds. Rose says, I'm calling this time Solidarinuk USA 2.0. Okay, I like it. Well, there's all sorts of ways we can coin these phrases. Devin says, a simple and clear message is how we can share understanding of current reality. Yeah. The current reality is that we are seeing the rise of authoritarianism and fascism in the United States. That's a clear way of stating that. So we need to be clearer about naming it and then thinking about what our solutions are. Understanding and examining how we got here, what is required of us in the moment to keep the people in our communities safe. And then how do we, I think the other part of this new full moon is starting to talk about how do we move forward? How do we dismantle the old narratives that brought us to this point so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again? And if we keep trying to use the tools of the old story, if we keep trying to use the tools of colonialism, of oppression, of white supremacy, of debt slavery, of slavery in general, we're not going to be able to create a new story using those tools. So we have to be visionaries. We have to think outside the box a little bit. And this is the challenge that we have now, is stabilizing our communities through mutual aid networks, through protecting each other, through calling out and witnessing that oppression and sharing it with the world so other people understand what's actually happening in your communities. And then starting to really ask the tough questions about how do we start dismantling this old system that only really benefits the top 0.0001%. And what it really comes down to, from what I've been witnessing, all of this state-sponsored violence, these imperial boomerangs, if you're not familiar with that term, that's a term related to when a powerful country goes into other countries, colonizes them, takes their common resources and uses violence to do so. Eventually, the techniques that they're using to do that boomerang back onto their own citizens. And this is what we're witnessing here today, the imperial boomerang. And when we see that happening, we need to figure out, well, okay, there is a certain historical precedent that we have continued on through sometimes just through ignorance, really. I mean, there is a lot of propaganda that we absorbed as young people, especially in America, about America's role in the world, about what the values of this country are, about what our rights are. But there's a shadow side to all of that as well. And this shadow side, with Pluto going through Aquarius, and with Pluto, the Pluto return of the United States in the past decade or so, is bringing up some of the things that have been cast aside underground, pushed underneath the surface, that have been true for a long time, but that we haven't been willing to face, right? Because we are, and I will say, in defense of a lot of folks, they're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to live. They're just trying to take care of their families. They're trying to live their everyday lives. But at a certain point, we have to start thinking about these macrocosmic issues, these bigger issues. And I think astrology can guide us in that in a way that is a little bit more objective than we could be as individuals. We will never be completely objective, even as astrologers. And if we attempt to be quote unquote perfectly objective, then we start to fall into that, both sides isms. We start to fall into not really being our authentic selves. And that becomes a problem. I've seen criticism online recently in various communities about, well, the line is always this: stick to whatever, insert blank, stick to sports, stick to astrology, stick to this, and that this shouldn't be political. I got news for you, friends. The last couple thousands of years of astrological practice, it was mostly practiced by people who were advisors to very powerful people about the political actions that they should take within the world. So to the argument that astrology shouldn't be political, it's ridiculous. It's an absolutely ridiculous logical fallacy. It's only been in the last maybe 50 to 100 years that astrology has been turned into a, what does this mean for me and my personality? It's been very personalized in that regard. And it can have value for that. But it is also a way of understanding our collective realities as well. Rose says, as they say, if you aren't a Native American, we are all immigrants or descendants of. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody here on this continent, Rose, is living on, stolen land like this. And that's really the long and the short of it. Now, we can talk about how we can learn how to share these lands and resources with each other. But we really should, it's crazy to me, the logic that people have about their entitlement is really, it's really confusing sometimes, right? We have such this idea of entitlement. And how do we start dismantling that idea as well? Maru says, Spencer, I feel what you say. I'm a 15-degree Leo sun, 27 degrees moon in Taurus. I've been getting big waves of rage, but as a liberating force to me to do in the world and to make myself space in this country. Yeah, me too, friend. At the end of the day, we all have different comfort levels with risk. We all have different comfort levels with conflict. We all have different comfort levels with various ways of being in the world. And it's going to challenge some of us who are a little bit more conflict averse. But there do come times in our lives where you kind of have to dig deep and you have to say, who am I really going to be when the crisis happens? I've been preaching on this channel to stay centered for your moment, to be able to stay calm in your moment so that when the crisis reaches you, you will be able to make decisions in a level-headed way. Well, friends, the crisis has come to my community. The crisis has come to your community. This is your moment, right? This is what we've been preparing for as spiritual practitioners that are attempting to have clarity about what's going on around us so that we can help the most amount of people when we are called to do so. So, yeah, this is an important inflection point. Cosmic Rose says, beavers build. My grandmother's maiden name was Beaver. Perfect. They're amazing creatures, Rose. Amazing, incredible creatures. They're probably second, not probably, they're second to human beings in their ability to shape their environments. So they're an excellent, excellent animal guide to show us how to shape our realities. We have a lot of power in shaping our realities and shaping how we organize our relationships to one another. And the beautiful thing about those beaver dams is they create these big, huge pools of water. Those dams can last almost 100 years. Isn't that incredible? It's just so beautiful. And the sediment that settles eventually, when the dam breaks, becomes new meadow. They are restorers, recyclers of energy. They're restorers of habitat. It's beautiful. This is something that I've really felt inspired in the last little while. I was thinking about, what is my role like in all of this? And I really have a strong connection to the natural world, to the animal and, um, you know, environmental issues that we're facing, as far as seeing things as a part of an interconnected whole. So you're going to hear a lot here on this channel. How do we create interconnectedness? How do we return to the understanding of an ensouled world that is completely dependent on relationships with one another? Um, I haven't always done it well in my life. I've had some times in my life, Rose, where I've been isolated, where I've been paranoid, where I didn't trust the people around me. It's a trauma response. And that's one of the things that, like, for me as a person, as an individual, I'm trying to heal the ability to trust others, to be able to work with others. And this is something that we can do as an individual. Like, this is one we'll talk about with this astrology today. What can we do as individuals? How does that contribute to the collective? It's a lot easier to start to heal your role within your community when you start working on yourself in that regard. There's always an opportunity to change. This is why I think it's really important for us to call out oppression, call out ignorance, hold power accountable, hold our neighbors and our family members accountable, but also to leave space for them to change. I'm going to repeat that. Leave space for them to change. Rather than pushing them further into isolation, how do we hold space for someone to change their mind? Because if we push people further and further away into isolation, they become more and more radicalized. How do we bring them back in and say, you know what? I know that you're scared. I know that you're paranoid. I know that there's been some blind spots that you've had in your life, but there's a different way. I think it's really important. Rose says, my honey is a Leo, but Taurus rising. My dad's a Taurus rising, Rose. And I had a very Taurus conversation with him where I pushed him to the edge of his Taurus limit, where he started digging his heels in. And he's like, I'm uncomfortable with this. But I didn't let him off the hook. And I didn't, with love though, with love. We were on the phone for 2 hours just talking about externalization of costs. And his argument was, well, I need to see proof of what you're telling me. And I'm like, well, here's a number of resources. He's like, I need to do my own research. And I'm like, okay, well, go do that and come back to me. And then his line after that was, well, you're smarter than me. I don't know how to do this. It's like, well, so you're just basically saying that you're not going to change. And that's the point we get to with a lot of people. We share new ideas. Sometimes they dig their heels in. I would say on the flip side of that, in defense of my poor father, sometimes you got to give people like a Taurus rising time to absorb things into their body. When you share a new idea with someone, sometimes we can't always expect them to change everything about their life overnight. Sometimes they have to really digest it, feel it in their body, right? And I know that with Neptune and Aries and Saturn and Aries, and this is also, I'm talking to myself here too, Rose. Sometimes we have to allow the process to play out a little bit. And we can't force these ideas on people. We have to share them with passion and then let people come to that realization. Javiera says, I'm in the boat shore to shore. Hello, everyone. Sending hugs and blessings, everyone. Nice to see you, Javiera. Yeah, you're living this, right? With just, you have some Aquarius placements, Javiera, or just maybe with your experience of life. So let's see if we can shepherd each other safely from one reality to the next, friend. Devin says, we are definitely in a Bardo space as a culture here in the United States. The 15th degree is also where the Chinese solar calendar starts their first day of spring. 100%. I think even people who have been so stuck in their illusion are starting to realize that that safety that they've been upholding is false, right? That the rights that they thought they had. Make no mistake, friends, this isn't a blue or red issue. This isn't a Democrat, Republican issue. This is a human being issue. People are losing their right to due process, regardless of what you feel about immigration enforcement and things of that nature, we have a Fourth Amendment that says you are allowed due process, which is you are allowed your day in court to make your argument, and those rights have been taken away. Also, we have people that defend the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Well, now we have people that are talking about, well, you shouldn't have the right to bear arms if you're going to a protest or something like that. Well, which is it? Which is it, friends? Really what it comes down to, and if I'm going to be blunt about this, the folks that argue for the right to bear arms, they're arguing for the right for white people to bear arms to defend themselves against brown people. When a brown person takes up arms, like we've seen with the Black Panther Party, they start to get real nervous, and they start to get a little bit, start wiggling around, and you start seeing people saying, well, you shouldn't be able to have a gun, in this type of protest, but this is okay for one group, but not for the others. And that's always really kind of been the case. There is a different set of reality for the people that have been in the majority. There's been a completely different set of reality and rules for people that are in the minority. And this is something I think people are hopefully starting to get hip to and railing against, I hope. Because one of the things in American history is that Constitution, that Declaration of Independence, there are lines in there that says all men are created equal, right? That the rights of these constitutional declarations are for everyone in this country, not just for someone who looks a certain way or is in a certain amount of power. So that's what we're defending at this point. All right. Corbin Tracy is here. He says, hi, Spencer. I made it for a live. Nice to see you, Corbin. Hope everything's working out. Tracy, I think it could be Tracy. Hope everything's working out for you, friend. Global Village, absolutely. Devin says, absolutely, Spencer. Exporting, this is going back, and we've got a delay on the chat, so we're going to go back and get comments from some things that I may have talked about before. Devin says, absolutely, Spencer. Exporting labor and harm for the comfort of the Western world. Huge, huge, huge issue. Very, very important that we start to internalize the costs of things. I'm going to tell you about this book again, friends. It's called Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, Society, and the Age of Transition, the revised edition by Charles Eisenstein. Go check it out. There's a free version. There's a free PDF. It was released in Creative Commons. There's a free PDF if you want to do your own homework with it. But that was an idea that he verbalized very well. It's something that I think I've been aware of and felt, but he has a really great way of really describing it in tangible terms. And really the idea is this. The cost of something is, we think about the cost of building infrastructure. We think about the cost of the wood that goes into building our homes. We think about the cost of the tools that it takes to build those things. What we don't think about is the costs to the environment if we create waste from that for future generations, for other countries, for marginalized communities. Think about really this something that is going on in my own community as well. The data centers that are going up in rural communities. This is an externalization of costs. It's putting the economic and environmental damage on rural communities. It's externalizing the use of artificial intelligence, of saying, well, we can, this is a really poignant example. We can type in a question to ChatGPT. We can create these images, this AI fucking slop. I fucking hate all of it, if I'm going to be really upfront about it. We don't think of the cost of that community having more expensive electricity, more expensive water, more environmental damage, more noise pollution, more light pollution, the loss of farmable land. That's an externalization of the cost every time you make an inquiry with ChatGPT. Every time you make some bullshit video or picture of you as a superhero in some other AI thing. That's an externalization of the cost. That is not taking into account the full cost of your actions. And you can apply this to so many different situations. You go and you want a cheap good in, I don't know, Walmart or whatever, Amazon, etc. What you're not taking into the account is the externalization of the labor in the sweatshops in China where it was built or made. What you're not taking into account when you buy produce from California, when you live in Maine, is the externalization of the cost to get that good from California to Maine. If we actually priced things taking into account the externalities, that lettuce that you bought from California would be so expensive in Maine that it wouldn't be tenable to purchase it. These are the externalization of costs that we're talking about. And we've been doing this as a country for a long time. And again, just to review, when America or other colonizing nations, not just America, this is the British Empire, this is other westernized world places, okay? They will go into developing nations. They will say, we will force you. They're not going to say we will give you. They'll say we will force you through military intervention to give us your resources. And what we will do is we're going to give you a loan to build out all the infrastructure so that we can move your resources from your country to ours. And then what happens is you have to pay us interest on that loan, so that to service the interest, the usury on that loan, you have to give us all of the things that you create with that infrastructure that you built with the loan. This is how countries stay poor. And you just saw it happen in a country like Venezuela. You literally had a military intervention who overthrew their government so that their contracts could be put into place by American or Western oil companies to start building out infrastructure to take that resource from those people and move it to the pockets of the people in the Western country that went in and overthrew their government. And there will probably be loans to that country that have interest. And then the Venezuelan people are in debt slavery to a country like America for however many more centuries that lasts or whatnot. That's the cycle that keeps getting repeated. Okay? It's not fair. And your comfort as a Westerner is not worth the suffering of someone south of the equator. That's what you have to reconcile at this point. There are going to be people that say, well, I don't care. I just trying to live my life. We need to start caring. That's what that boomerang is all about. You should care, because the type of intervention that you see when a government goes into somewhere like Venezuela is the types of oppression, the types of action that they are going to assert on those citizens. It's going to happen here. It eventually boomerangs back around to the citizens of the colonizing power. Use your eyes, friends. You've seen it all week. It's undeniable. So these are the types of questions that we have to ask as to how do we change this, right? And first of all, it's through building community and like we are here today, having tough discussions, figuring out how do we become our most authentic self as we build to a full moon in Leo. What role do we want to play that will have collective good rather than just selfish interests? Okay. Rose is saying, do you remember Solidarnosc? And I don't know that term, in Poland, that fought back against communism and finally won eventually USSR caved too. I'll have to look that up. I mean, I'll have to figure, that's a new one to me. So thank you for bringing that up. I will take a look into that, and tell me more in the chat if you've got some more information on it. Stick to being humane, exactly. Okay. Astrology has helped businesses decide to invest in a foreign business country or not. IT was even on a show back in 1999. Brain fart on the host name at the moment, Rose says. Yeah, there's all sorts of different ways astrology has been used for mundane purposes. There's a whole field of astrology called mundane astrology, and that's thinking about how to make political decisions, how to make economic decisions, the fate of nations, the fate of kings. All of those things have been wrapped up in astrology for thousands of years. And to tell people now that that's not the way to use it, it's crazy. Devin says, interconnected and interdependence. Our belief in independence is a false declaration of lived reality. 100%. And Charles Eisenstein in Sacred Economics talks about the story of separation and how it's just this false narrative. Like, and he goes all the way back to Cartesian, logic, where Rene Descartes, the biggest fuck in the history of the world. Sorry, I hate that guy so much. Says that we are a soul separate from a body, and he started the movement of unsouling the world, of humanity starting to see themselves as separate from nature, as the dominant force of nature. And I'm sure that there were people before that, but he was the one that really, just took the soul out of everything, took the life force out of everything. And I think we're starting to try, we are at the inflection point, friends, where if you think about Pluto and Aquarius, you think about Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in air signs, and Aquarius in particular, we're at the point in history where we have to start working together for the survival of the species moving forward. This planet will not sustain human life very much longer if we don't drop all this edifice of separation, right? All this false narrative that we have to be fighting with one another, with countries, with the false narrative of fucking borders, if we're just being real. Because the actions that we take, they don't know borders. The pollution that we create in the United States, it doesn't stay within a border. The actions in China don't necessarily stay. It all goes into the atmosphere and circulates. The trawling that happens in the bottom of the ocean floor, that affects a lot of nations. That affects the whole ecosystem. So if you learn nothing else from today, from the talks that we have and from being a part of this channel, and the astrology is suggesting, and our eyes are suggesting, that the false narrative of separation is one that needs to die. That is what we are experiencing. We're experiencing that, the ego death of that mythological narrative, that we're these separate individual beings, that humanity is separate from nature, that we're given this earth to just utilize as a resource. I don't even like that word anymore. I like the idea that has been presented to me both by Robin Wall Kimmerer and Braiding Sweetgrass and Charles Eisenstein in Sacred Economics, of the gifts that this planet shares with us. And I will tell you, please go watch the Ocean documentary by David Attenborough. David Attenborough has spent 100 years, literally 100 years of his life, well, maybe 80 of those 100 when he came to adulthood, but he's been on this planet for a century. And what he's committed himself to, he's a Taurus. I love all the Taurus parts of him, right? He loves this planet. And he realizes that if we take care of it, it will heal. In that Ocean documentary, they spent a lot of time talking about the destruction of bottom trawling, which basically is like a big ship that takes a huge chain and just that stirs up anything on the bottom, destroys everything on the bottom of the ocean, a unique ecosystem in and of itself that creates this like desolate desert after it's done for a few scallops, for one singular species, destroying all the life in its path to catch a couple of species. What he's finding, though, is that if we let those spaces heal for even 5 years, it will completely spring back to life, and that life will spread out into the neighboring areas. Now, there's an agreement that has been made between different nations that we're going to protect a third of the ocean space by 2030 and make them reserves. I'll believe it when I see it, but we need to hold people accountable for that, because the other thing that's just mind-blowing and amazing is that he shows us the potential for the oceans to be a really, really important carbon sink, even more important than the rainforest. Like all that algae that you see, like, is sucking up carbon and sucking up heat. This is the way that we heal the world, is by protecting the oceans and by letting those spaces regenerate and life springing back to life. You know what the irony of that is that when we actually steward things responsibly, there's more abundance to go around. When we just clear cut, that's the version of clear cutting a forest, is the bottom trawler. When we just clear cut the bottom of the ocean, it dies and nobody gets anything. You see what I'm saying? It's so counterintuitive to be like, well, if I just take it all, then I'll have more. It's not how it works. You take it all now, there's none in the future or even in the present. So how do we become responsible citizens of stewardship that will actually lead to more abundance? There will be less suffering and scarcity if we practice these types of methods. It's just wild to me how we've been trained to think otherwise in a competitive way. Okay, Rose says, I had a Twitch friend. I make contact from Iran. Another situation in the world that is horrifying, right? Iran is a good cautionary tale as to what can happen if we allow the forces of oppression to continue. So this is our inflection point, our choice to say, and we need to help liberate that community as well. But yeah, horrifying. Yeah, Rose says, DTJ just said no one should have guns but the government. Yeah, he did. Like, it's the logical knots that people are tying themselves in to stay a part of that cult-like thinking are incredible at this point. And even the don't tread on me people are like, well, you know, just maybe you shouldn't have a gun in this situation, but it's okay in this situation. It's ridiculous. Maria, what's up, Maria? Marie 503 says, midheaven natal sun in Taurus conjunct Algol and transiting Uranus, Leo rising 15 degrees with Pluto on the first. Please tell me things will lighten up. Marie, I would love to tell you that. I think that there's going to be some bumpy patches in at least the next month. The astrology moving forward for February is unsettling. I do think that there will always be little moments here and there. I think that when we move into Pisces season, there is the benefit of all of those planets in Pisces being hosted by Jupiter in Cancer, and eventually a direct Jupiter in Cancer. So that's good news. Will things settle down? Not without you participating in making it change. I guess that's what I will say. It's the astrology, learning astrology doesn't absolve us of personal responsibility for making those changes on our planet. But I don't want people to think that they have to live in a constant state of agitation. That's just exhausting. So what I would suggest, Marie, is finding ways to refill your well while not putting our heads in the sand or denying our realities, and so that we can be present when we need to be present, and then we can recover when we need to recover. I've been joining some groups that have been organizing neighbors, and there was a group where I was getting a lot of notifications about it, and I had to turn off the banner notifications on my phone because I was just getting a notification every 5 seconds. That was my way of like saying, okay, I want to be aware of this. I want to be able to do this, though. I want to be aware of this in a time that I can handle participating in it, so that it's not just a constant stream of like noise. And I think that there's going to be a lot of things like that moving forward, Marie, where we have to figure out how do we participate and be responsible and help our neighbors, but also get some time where we can repair our nervous system, like the oceans, right? Like the oceans need to rest every once in a while to return back to life. So I will try to guide you through the astrological timing of it, but I think that there's going to be some difficult things coming up on the horizon, and I will tell you when those dates might be so that you can anticipate it. But I don't want to put you in a state of fear, right? I don't want to put you in a state of constant fear. It's okay to be a little bit afraid right now. I think a lot of us are really afraid right now, but I think that we have to be able to look around us in the moments when it's calmer. Like in this moment right now, as we're together, we are probably fairly safe in this present moment. That might not be true an hour from now or a day from now or a week from now. But you have to take those moments and you have to let that restore you, right? And sometimes you have to take a time out from the news, from all the notifications. It's okay to do so, as long as you come back to it once you're refreshed, and be present and available for when there is a real emergency around you. Like I had a number of groups that I'm a part of, and I turned off notifications for the group that was further away from me, and I left the ones on for the one that's right around my personal area, so that I know that if something's going on in my personal area, I know that I will be ready to respond. But I can't be everywhere all at once, and neither can anyone here in this community chat. Devin says, I tried to build a website with AI, but I had it track my carbon footprint. After half an hour, I racked up the equivalent of driving 100 miles. Really amazing work that you're doing there, Devin. Trying to understand the externalization of costs of our actions. This is something that as a community, we really struggle with as human beings, is we kind of do things and then track the costs of it after it's done. I'm here to make a plea for estimating the actual real costs of things before we make those decisions, before we do the damage, so that we can make better choices. This is what astrology can help us with too, is to make those better choices in the moment, because we understand the ramifications. Javier says, you're killing me. The Leo full moon got Spencer all fired up. I love it. I mean, yes, if we're doing some astrology around it, the full moon is in my first house. So you're getting Spencer mask off, unfiltered today. But I think that this is going to have to be something that all of us start doing, that all of us start really digging deep for the courage needed to speak up and speak out. It's scary. I am not comfortable sometimes speaking like this. And some of it comes as a trauma response. Javier, I grew up in a family that changed a lot. There was material security on some level, but there wasn't. I was talking to my partner about this today. She contextualized it really well. There was material security on one hand, but there wasn't emotional security. There was always this this feeling of not belonging, this feeling of always having to start over, this feeling of, I also had a stepfather that was a police officer, this feeling of you can't speak back to an authority figure or you are going to be in big trouble. Like there is a lot of reasons why we put on the masks that we do. A lot of it is a trauma response. But as we start to learn about ourselves and as we start to see people in our community suffering and learn more about what is reality and what is falsehood, sometimes it's really, you can't go back. You can't go back. Nobody is safe if we stay silent. Especially, I think, I don't know. I've preached kindness on here, and that will continue to be a messaging. But kindness doesn't mean weakness. Kindness doesn't mean staying in a bubble of safety so that while other people suffer and fight your battles for you. This is the things I think a lot of people need to understand, is that externalization of costs is allowing other people to fight your battles for you. That's cowardice. That's not what a Leo full moon's all about. A Leo full moon's about being courageous, about standing up for your community members, about speaking up and letting your true feelings known so that you allow other people to feel the courage necessary to speak out in their communities, so that you set an example for people to speak truth to power. This is what a Leo full moon is about. And it's you know where it comes from, Javiera? It comes from love. Care about you. Care about all of you. I mean, Javiera is an immigrant living in Ontario from Nicaragua. She's a brown person living in a sea of white faces and could be in physical danger. I also have a partner who is brown. And when you see people that are being profiled and people that you care about are in danger, the right thing to do is to stand up for them and to speak out on their behalf. So I think that this is a moment to dig deep for that type of courage, and Leo can show us the way. And it doesn't have to be done with false bravado. I don't have to sit here and shout all sorts of expletives, but I can shine a big spotlight on, I think the bigger picture is what I'm attempting to do today. Is how did we get to this point? We can all say that, well, I don't know. Most of us here are probably saying like, this is a horrible thing that we're experiencing. There are people that are still, licking boots and have their head shoved up their ass and want to continue to stay in that place. But I think a lot of people here are kind of like, holy shit, this is way worse than we thought. And it's time to do something about it. So I digress. Maru says, sometimes it goes without military. In Argentina, it's been a month of fires in the south. USA and Israel are involved. They are proofs, and the state is doing nothing because they are responsible too. Yeah, this is let me unpack this. Month of fires in the south. Yeah, this is, talking about the externalization of costs and colonialism, I'm assuming, right, Maru? And, the more stories we hear like that, the more that we can kind of see that this is not just a isolated circumstance. Rose says, I just remembered what I was going to DM you in Blue Sky. Looking forward to it, friend. Okay, Cosmic Rose says, WHO is the first big interview host on Ted Turner channel. All right, well, send me that information. Javier says, I love when Spencer drops F-bombs. I don't know. I'm upset if I'm going to get to that point. And as a Taurus moon, I try to stay centered and I try to stay calm. And I don't really think it does anybody any good if we're just like getting out of control. And I hope that today that we're staying in control and looking at things from a big picture, while also expressing our real feelings. Yeah, I'm fucking pissed. I'm fucking scared. I'm fucking sad. So that's a lot of those things all wrapped into one. And we have to be honest about our feelings if we want to heal them. We have to express our feelings if we want to have the catharsis necessary to be able to come back to center. If we keep repressing feelings, they just explode in ways that aren't productive, that are just creating collateral damage. So yeah, there's going to be some F-bombs every once in a while, but if you can't drop an F-bomb now, when is the proper time? Right? Mario says that the hate on Descartes. Yeah, such a fuck. I hate. I'm sorry. That guy makes me swear every single time. He's the worst philosopher in the history of philosophy. Rose says Larry King. They were on his show. My mom even saw it back then. Who was the first? Okay. I'll have to come back to that, Rose. I'm getting out of context with that, but send me some more information about what you're thinking about. Stellar Rendition says, love David Attenborough. The world needs more people like him. I agree. What an amazing human being who has shown us the great beauty and interconnectedness of this world. I have been thinking a lot about what really excites me. And I will say, helping people to understand how beautifully interconnected we are, whether it's through the beauty of nature or through the beauty of astrology or the beauty of whatever. I think that's what my purpose on this planet is. And maybe we'll talk more about just beautiful nature and ecosystems. Maybe there will be some shifts in some things that we talk about that don't necessarily just have to be 100% focused on very technical astrological things, because I think astrology is it's a symbol for the other things that we're trying to experience. And I'll always try to bring it back to some of these symbols, but let's talk more about nature, right? Selene's Devin says Descartes had Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter, Pluto, and Rahu, and Aries with Neptune and Leo. No wonder he said what he said. Yeah, like just the delusion of individuality. He just was giving negative Aries propaganda, for sure. Rose says he said the quiet part out loud. Yeah, that look. Oh, that's just the look that I had. Rose, I've had to really kind of figure out how to express my ideas in a way that isn't too intense. I'm an intense person. I don't know if you all have figured this out yet, but yes, there is I've been attempting to be kinder and gentler as a mid-40s adult. People, I had such strong feelings and emotions as a young person that I didn't always know how to communicate them in a healthy way. And I've done so much work on trying to do that. But it's not perfect. And I'm trying to do this in a way that is moving towards being productive rather than destructive. So, but yeah, if anybody knows me personally, I can stare someone into oblivion. Like the look of when I'm upset, this is a Cancer kind of thing too. It's like, it's a look like shooting daggers. But we also have to learn how to soften some of those edges sometimes too. But anyway, Maro says, very similar to me, same position of your sun with my moon, same position of your ascendant with my sun. There you go. Marie says, thank you, Spencer. I need encouragement. Yeah. Marie, like, my hope is not to add to chaos. As an astrologer, I've seen people exploit the negativity of our worlds for sensationalism. I never want to be a sensationalist astrologer. Sometimes that has led to maybe some criticism of like, well, you're not getting excited enough about this particular thing. I think that I save this type of intensity for when the shit's really hitting the fan. And if it's not for this moment, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? So, but that being said, Marie, you still do need to take time out to restore yourself. Because what I have learned in moments of crisis is oftentimes it's a marathon and not a sprint. It's very easy to burn ourselves out. And then when we get burnt out, which is part of what oppressive power is trying to do, it's trying to make you so exhausted that you give up. And this is another reason why I don't like get super fucking upset all the time, because it's exhausting. It's adrenaline. And then you get so tired that you don't want to do anything. You have to pace yourself with this type of thing. It's going to be a long game. I think we're going to win. As far as when I say we, I mean people who care about each other. But there's gonna be some bumpy patches, and it's good to take care of yourself around these periods of time and to rest, so that when your moment comes, and it will, Marie, your moment, everyone's moment is going to come. Whether it's just a choice that you have to make that's a difficult choice in the moment, whether it's to stand up for someone else or stand up for yourself, or to make different choices to get out of your comfort zone, that will take energy, good energy. Rose says, I shut off some of my iPad alarms too. Good. Yeah. It's tough to be in crisis mode 24/7. We don't necessarily have to be responding to every single crisis, even if it's in our community. We don't have to respond to every single ice sighting. We could, if it's in our immediate neighborhood, yes, go out and bear witness and protect the people around you. But you're gonna exhaust yourself if you're just running around like if we run around like chickens with our heads cut off. Devin says, proud of you, Spencer. Well, Devin, appreciate you too, friend. Devin's been a person that has, Devin, you've been a voice of this type of thing for a long time. And sometimes it takes some of us a little bit longer to get to that point and to have the courage to speak out. Like, you've always been a courageous person, and I want to say that I appreciate you. And sometimes our conversations help me to feel brave, to speak out about these things publicly. So I hope that our talk today as a community makes some of you brave to share your true feelings and your fears and your hopes and your support, all of those things. It's important. But thank you, Devin. Appreciate you. Javier says, sorry, I think my Gemini sun just wants to ease the tension, not always well placed. Yeah, Javier says, I agree with your passion. You're a very inclusive person. One of the reasons I love you. Oh, appreciate you. Yeah, as a person who grew up in a lot of different environments with a lot of different family members, I don't know if you all know, but I have a lot of divorces in my family. I had 4 different stepdads, 3 different stepmoms. Like, every few years, I had a completely new situation I had to get used to and adjust to. And I think that helped me see that there's so many different ways of living, and hopefully it's helped me to have compassion for lots of different people in the world. I even just like I talked about earlier, I have a stepdad as a police officer. Speaking with him has been really frustrating in a lot of ways. It's also been really enlightening in a lot of ways. It helps me see him as a human being, not just as a symbol of a force. Like, he had some really challenging worldviews. He also had a father that fought in World War II that died on the beaches of Normandy when he was a baby. And that changes people. And to be able to have conversations with people like that from all walks of life, it's important. And I think it's important to see where someone's coming from. And I always want to see where people are coming from with it. I had really difficult conversations with my stepdad when I was a late teenager or young adult, where I think I said to him at one point, do you think that you're trying to be a hero, in these situations so that you can live up to your father's sacrifice? And I don't think anyone had ever said that to him before. I don't think he had ever heard that. And because he sat there for like a good 5 minutes and was like, yeah, I think you're right. So you never know when you actually try to reach people from their humanities. You don't always know where someone's coming from. Just like a lot of the people that are afraid right now, some of their reaction is to double down on their scapegoating of people that don't look like them or don't believe like them. They do that because they're scared. They do that because they are afraid. And they do that because they want to uphold an illusion of safety. And what I'm here to say to those of you, if you have these kind of things in your experience, if you're struggling with these things, I'm going to reiterate, this isn't a Republican, Democrat, blue, red issue. This is an issue where very powerful people are trying to sow division and chaos so that they can control people easier. That's really the end of the long and the short of it. And the more that we allow them to perpetuate the myth of separation, the more they become empowered and the weaker that we become as a community. The more that we start to see each other as part of a collective in relationship with one another, the more we weaken the powers of oppression. It's that simple. And that's going to require people to talk to each other rather than demonize each other. Okay? That's going to allow, you have to allow space for people to be brought back into community. If you isolate them, if you put yourself in your echo chamber, you don't allow any space for people to come back in, and then you just galvanize their fear. It's hard to do, really hard to do. Still have a relationship with my stepdad. My mother has passed on. I still talk to him every once in a while. You know, we don't agree politically, but by bringing him in as in community, there is an opportunity to have the conversation rather than no opportunity. Do you see what I'm saying? Important to realize that as we move forward, especially with people that you disagree with. Rose says, I love it. Venus conjunct Pluto here. Cancer, Sun, Scorpio, MC. Love it. Hey, Trauma Raised Me is here. What's up, Marietta? Marietta, hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Nice to see you. Hope everything's going your way. Devin says, Maria, on my channel, I have a meditation that connects us to the earth if you ever need a grounding moment. I love it. We need more of that. We need to stay centered. We need to stay grounded. We need to practice, do our spiritual practices, those things as well. Marietta says, the Holy Bible says that the race isn't given to the swift nor the strong, but the one who endures to the end. I love it. There you go. That's wise wisdom from that spiritual tradition, my friend. So Lara says, love the conversation. I do have an astrological question. I have a couple placements at 20 degrees Leo plus minutes. Is this considered second or third decan? That's a great question, Solara. 20 degrees Leo and extra minutes is the third decan of Leo. So that is the Seven of Wands card decan. It's called the Banner. I'll show you what it looks like here. We'll talk more about the astrology here. I just think this is an important thing to start with. But Solara, here's Leo 3. This is the Banner, right, that Austin Coppock calls it. And it is a Mars-ruled decan. This is actually the decan of my ascendant. So this is where I live in the first house. But it really, a lot of the themes are defending authenticity and being able to say, you know what, here's what I believe, and how do I find the courage necessary to be true to myself and my integrity. And this is, we'll talk about what Leo 2 is and transition to that in a second. But yes, it would be Leo 3. Rose says, you were talking about being intense, and that's the only reason I shared chart info. There you go. Yeah, intensity can be intense love. You know, intensity can be intense anger, intense hatred, but it can be intense love and intense protective energy too. So intensity can be channeled in a lot of different ways. Rose says, I wish they would reprint 36 Faces. I think you and a lot of people wish that too. There's a lot of talk about it coming out at various times. I think that, I don't know, Austin has his own process, and I'm sure that he probably has a pretty high standard and maybe has some perfectionistic tendencies. I think the word that I get out of the Coppock kind of land is that he's very committed to his classes and his students, and a lot of his time is taken up by that. And he also just had a baby. So, but yes, I do hope that work is able to be put out into the world, because it's excellent, and he's an incredible writer. And I think that more people would benefit from his wisdom and his knowledge for sure. Okay. All right. So we've done things a little differently today. Just to review, we started off the broadcast today turning off the advertisements, turning off the not advertising any product or service today, because today is a day of general strike. Today is a day of not purchasing things within the system to send a message to those in power that we don't agree with the way that they're treating our citizens. People are walking out of schools, walking out of jobs. They're not purchasing things today. Again, I debated about showing up today for this. I actually scheduled it. I forgot about the strike, and I'd already had everything scheduled, but then I decided to do the strike in my own way and just show up and hold space for you. And what I would appreciate that you would do, like there is a pinned comment at the top of this chat that is an organization that looks for mutual aid organizations. If you do have resources today and you'd like to contribute financially, go look up an organization that's in your area and contribute and use your resources towards that today. Because there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of good work to try to protect people in their local communities. And I think that that's a great way to participate, even if you're just sitting at your own home trying to figure out what can I do next. And I think the other thing to do, and then we'll talk a little bit more about these details. Well, the other thing you can do is to talk to your people in your community. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know people in your online community like we have here. Don't be afraid to share your stories. Don't be afraid to speak out in your communities and on your platforms. I think that what I have observed that has happened today is an example of the full moon in Leo, an example of attempting to be integrated with an inner belief and an outer expression. So if your thought was like, well, we didn't learn any astrology in that first hour. Au contraire. We were walking our talk, right? And we were showing an example of someone, myself, trying to articulate what I feel internally and have that match what I'm saying in my mouth. That is the core essence of the full moon in Leo. And here are some extra details for you as well. Do me a huge favor before we do that, though. If you could do me a favor, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please donate to your local mutual aid societies. Please donate to your, I don't know, maybe it's the ACLU, maybe it's your local immigration response organization. There's all sorts of ways to use your dollars in voting in a way that is helpful rather than adding to the machine. If you choose just to protest by not spending any money today, that is also good, right? This is really the only language that fascism and corporatism understands is the bottom line, profit. And when we hit them in the place that is the only language that they speak, money, profit, that's the way to make real change. And yes, maybe it leads to some temporary discomfort, but it will lead to a much more just organization of society moving forward. So do me a favor, like and subscribe to the video. Do all of those things that I talked about. And let's talk a little bit more about some of the details as they unfold. So, of course, we have this full moon in Leo, 13 degrees Leo, February 1st. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Pluto, co-present with the sun. Mars is in the first decan along with Pluto. The sun is in the second decan along with Venus. And Mercury is in the third decan of Aquarius, starting to apply to the square with Uranus. All of those planets are making a whole sign opposition to the moon in Leo. So let's break down Aquarius symbolism. Okay. So here is this full moon with we've got the Mercury, Venus, Mars, Pluto, co-present with the sun. Full moon is squared Uranus. Maybe today you've stopped in and you're like, man, I've never heard Spencer talk like that before. Maybe you're shocked that he actually believes that. Maybe some of you are like, oh, I don't agree with that. Unsubscribe. If so, see you later. Bye. Sorry, this is who I am. And this is who I've always been, to be honest with you. This is just now you're seeing a unification with what I really feel inside of what I'm saying in a much more direct fashion. This sun in Aquarius too is showing us a figure in the Six of Swords that is transitioning from one shore to another. This is a decan about liminal spaces. This is a decan about coming up with unique solutions to challenging problems. I've talked about this in previous broadcasts, but Aquarius to me is a sign that really speaks towards a desire to cleanse what people view as something corrupt, something sullied, etc. There's lots of stories of flood myths in Aquarius symbolism, mythology, etc. Now, this can, if I just think about this from multiple perspectives, this can be really dangerous too. One of the tenets of a fascist movement, it's not really a government, it's a movement. A fascist movement is basically defined by a desire to have a cleansing of a particular community so that that country can experience a rebirth. To me, that's very Aquarian. That brings in that desire to clear away what they decide is sullied, right? They're misguided, but the impartial energy of Aquarius is still flowing through their character. That's something that people don't really get with astrology. I think sometimes that should be talked about more. I think the astrological forces themselves are fairly objective, okay? The human beings that are influenced by those planets are not. Do you see what I'm saying? These forces are being channeled through all of us and each one of our individual egos and characters. The fascist might take that Aquarius desire for purification and round up what immigrants that they deem illegal and try to put them in concentration camps for a purification of society. Someone who isn't a fascist may say that this government system that we have utilized in service of our comfort and individual and collective prosperity of Western civilization is corrupt and needs to be cleansed and changed. Those are different expressions of the same energy. And it's only expressed through individual egos. Don't ever forget that. None of these signs are inherently evil. None of these planets are inherently evil. I guess we could make an argument that some of the malefic planets, they aren't conducive to life. But some of those energies are necessary if they're filtered through characters that are trying to do good on this planet. The other thing you should keep in mind is that everybody centers themselves as the hero of their own story. The people that are, putting out oppression on people, they think they're doing something heroic. Some of them do. Some of them probably know at this point that they're fuckheads and that they're part of the problem. But they're probably, some of them are too scared to change. Some of them aren't. Some of them are waking up and saying, holy shit, this is not what I signed up for. And if that's you, welcome back. Welcome back, friend. There's plenty of room on this pontoon for you to go from that place where you were into a better place where you don't feel so alone, where you don't feel so isolated, and where you don't have to look yourself in the mirror and say, Jesus, what violence did I just perpetuate in service of my own comfort? There's room on the boat here. This decan is associated with a spirit called Phobos. And Phobos is a son of Mars. And Phobos was the spirit of rout from battle. Now, if we look at the Aquarius 1, we just go back for Aquarius 1 for a second. This one is showing a conflict and defeat, the Lord of Defeat. You have a smug victor. We just had the Mars-Pluto conjunction on Tuesday in this decan of Aquarius, first decan Aquarius. You had corruption that was exposed, violence that was exposed in relationship to those that have been exiled by society. I've talked about this for a number of months, and I'm not trying to take a victory lap here, but I think that the energy is, I'm just always amazed at how the symbolism plays out in the collective. We had a number of conjunctions with Pluto. And we saw it erupt in violence, right? We saw the corruption exposed through violence. So what happens after we experience a defeat? Sometimes we go off willingly into exile, like we see two figures here. Sometimes we have the smug victors. But then the next part of the story is moving from point A to point B. Sometimes if you look at this from different perspective, the Aquarius one, you realize that something is unjust and you don't want to be a part of the system. This could be an example of those of us who have maybe upheld our illusions to support our comfort, saying, you know what, finally, I just can't do this anymore. I can't participate in this corrupt system. I don't care how comfortable it is or uncomfortable it is. And then how do you get from point A to point B? It's a process, right? So when we have Aquarius, here's how this narrative plays out through Aquarius 3, right? Aquarius 3 says, I've had communication between the past and the future. I have been shepherded across, and I know what's on the other side of this. Aquarius 3 says, I have to kind of go back and I have to learn something from that past. Not to go back permanently, but to gather up the wisdom necessary to make a new start. And sometimes there's frustration in this decan of Aquarius 3 where we finally say, I've had enough. I have to go back and learn something from it. But I'm going to leave behind the 2 swords. I'm going to take the 5 swords of wisdom with me. And I'm finally going to take the leap into the unknown, right? I can't hang with this anymore. Now, February is going to be very Aquarius 3 coded because there's going to be all of these planets that are making the co-present energy in Aquarius. They're all going to start squaring Uranus in Taurus 3. I'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. But that narrative, okay, conflict or realizing that the system that you're in isn't just, moving on, and then finally revisiting to permanently move on is very important. I'm going to check in with the chat here. Let's see. Rose says Austin has had a rough year too. I believe it. I believe it. I haven't really been keeping up with the astrology podcast as much as I would like to. I just honestly don't have time to listen to a ton of other astrologers. I also am there's a part of me that would like to be able to formulate my own opinions on some of the things first before I engage with some of that material. So that's part of it too. But yeah, I'm sending Austin and Caitlin all the best. Like, they do a lot of great things for the community, and they have some really beautiful, beautiful offerings through Sphere and Sundry and through Austin's work. Really been inspired by his eloquence of speaking and writing. He's such a great writer. So sending them love. Solara says, I'm very Marsy. That makes sense about the 3rd decan of Leo. Thank you for explaining. Oh, appreciate that, friend. Yeah, Rose says, love Austin. Rose says, I'm very grateful you did it this way. It's a little experimental, but just kind of going with my gut today. You know, I didn't want to, I had mixed feelings about going live, and I wanted to participate in solidarity with the general strike today. And I think this is a good compromise. Being here, being present, shutting off all the monetization things, not advertising anything, but also trying to, I think, contribute my perspective on where we're at and maybe offer a different perspective about how we can get to a better place moving forward. Marietta says, it's hard where I live. I live in mega country in Illinois. There's so many socioeconomic issues here, and everybody sees, but few want to help and take action to alleviate the pain of others. One good thing I heard about in Illinois is that the governor signed into law an effect that removes nonviolent felonies off your record. Will help me greatly. I can finally get rid of this bogus theft felony that this area gave me. Yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. There's a lot of people that live in communities where it doesn't feel safe to speak up like this. And I hope that you find some community here and find some support with people that care about you and care about your rights and about your deserving of equality and being treated fairly. within any type of new system that we create moving forward. So it's this, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to process emotionally, but hang in there. Know that there's people that care about you, Marietta, and that hopefully we'll be working together to dismantle this old story. Because anytime you have laws, anytime you have an economic system, it's all a story. It's all something that we accept as our reality. And at any point, we can start writing a new one. And we have to brainstorm ideas about how we can make changes and tell a new story. That's from that creative visualization is when the new actions and laws get created, new organization, new belief systems. There's a lot of things to unpack with that. There's a lot of trauma to unpack from so many different folks. I mean, if you think about even just the oppressed communities, the poor communities that double down on scapegoating people of color, they are also victims of oppression from oligarchy. They have just chosen to scapegoat onto someone they perceive as weaker. Now, that doesn't excuse their behavior, but we need to understand that so that we can draw them back into the place of where they feel safe, right? Where they feel like they don't have to scapegoat, where there can be abundance within power, resources, etc., so that there doesn't have to be this fear of some other, right? Some othering that happens. It's really important. Devin says, Saturn rules the ultra wealthy and the ultra poor from Abu Mashar. Nice pull. I love that. I gotta do some more research with Abu Mashar. I've got a bunch of Ben Dykes books, and I would love to be able to sit with that material in a lot more greater detail moving forward. So yeah, maybe we need a Abu Mashar book club, Devin. Marietta says they want an all-white USA that never has and never will exist. Yeah, and amen to that never will exist. It's not going to happen, right? We're not going to let it happen. So I think that it's an illusion. It is a outcropping from slavery, really. Like, and here's the other thing too. Like, what I've seen a lot of people talk about ICE as the Gestapo, right? And I've seen people that have much more accurately characterized them as slave catchers from the late 1800s. And that's really what we're experiencing here, is an outcropping from the history of oppression. Now, the sad thing about this is that, when Jim Crow, for example, is an outcropping, is an oligarch class struggle. When we abolished slavery in this country, the oligarchs needed to maintain that illusion so that they could continue to exploit everybody, not just the people of color. Because that's what the issue is here. It's not a black-white issue. It's not a person of color, white supremacy issue. It is an oligarch versus the masses issue. All of those other things are horrific and are real trauma points, but they are not the core issue. That is the only way to change this is class equality, is to close the wealth gap. That is in my opinion, that is the only way to change this, is to start changing how we view the real problem, the core issue. That's why I've been so passionate about reading about economics, because that money is the core issue. The way that we arrange our resources and gifts and economic exchanges is the core issue, and has always been for centuries and centuries and centuries. So you go to the core root of the problem, you change belief systems around that, then you can start changing some of the other outcropping symptoms that are a result of that malignant tumor at the center of all of this. Scott Scorpio Sun Tarot says, hi, Spencer Michaud, Astrology, and all in the chat. Nice to see you, Scott. Hope you're doing well, my friend. I think I owe you an email. Marietta says, heroes don't oppress the many to uphold the few. Exactly. Let's see. Marietta says, my mama used to say the victory is in defeat. Yeah, I like that. I like that. D-A-F-E-E-T. Right. Let's see. Marietta says, I watched Apocalypse Now last night, and maybe it's just a girl thing, but I did not get that movie. I haven't watched Apocalypse Now. Maybe I should, but that kind of, I don't enjoy choosing to watch movies that have that type of violence. Maybe I should. Maybe I need to desensitize I don't know if I need to desensitize myself to it. Maybe I need to like engage with it so I can dismantle it. But I'm sorry that if you were traumatized by it, it sounds pretty intense. I don't have enough information to be able to help you understand it. I know that war is really ugly and can lead to all sorts of crazy mental health issues before, during, and after. And I just know it's not glamorous at all. What is the degree of the Aquarius eclipse? Javier says 28 degrees of Aquarius. We'll do a full live stream on that coming up. That's going to be on February the 17th. I'll talk about that in a second. Yep, 28 degrees, 59 minutes. Okay. Rose says, an illusion, just like a miracle. You'll never find it in your 23andMe DNA. Yeah. Yep. There you go. Yeah, it's so stupid. Like I don't know. The dismantling of white supremacy narratives is super important because it's just a crazy story. It's not real. Okay. And what is it based on? A little bit of a different amount of melanin in our skin? That's it just seems so fucking ridiculous to me. Like I just can't even wrap my head around how that is something that people are hung up on. It's so very strange to me. But again, a lot of it is the result of the trauma that people in repressed, poor areas have felt from the oligarchs that allowed them to become susceptible to brainwashing and scapegoating of people that didn't look like them. I need to make that clear. That's where the roots of racism come from, is from state power manipulating people into believing that they need to turn on each other or that one group is better than the other. It's so stupid, ridiculous. But it is because of the trauma that those people felt from their own oppression. Again, when we understand that, that's when we start to heal that, right? So let's get to the core issue. Javier says, when will Mercury be retrograde? Mercury stations retrograde on February the 26th at 22 degrees of Pisces. I'll talk about that in a second too. Marietta says, that's why slavery was never really abolished. It was reclassified as imprisonment. There you go. I don't disagree with that at all. Solara says, the illusion of all white is just a projection, the place of all in their shadow material on the other. Even if they got what they wanted, it still wouldn't satisfy them. Yeah. Yeah, because it is a trauma response, right? It is a gaslight of turning one form of oppression into another, right? Of being oppressed via class and then trying to turn it into an idea that they are oppressed because someone doesn't look like them. It's a bait and switch is what I'm telling you, okay? Trauma Raised Me says, abolish poverty. Payday Monsanto has a song called Abolish Poverty. Everybody go listen to it. Hook us up, friend. Stellar Rendition says, Mercury enters its shadow February 11th, eclipse February 17th, Mercury stations retrograde February 26th at 22 degrees Pisces. Okay. Javier says, interesting, thanks. I think this Leo full moon is going to set off eclipse season. I agree. Javier says, still need to watch your last video. It's still there. Javier says, I'm sure you went over some of these themes. I definitely did. I talked about a lot of this stuff in February's astrology. I gave really an important breakdown, a thorough breakdown on all of the details associated with it. So let's get back to this one. Let's talk about Saturn in its aversion in Pisces, hosting the sun. Okay. So let's bring up, do I have the Pisces? There it is. Okay, so here is the Pisces decan that this is associated with, Pisces 3. You could see in the chart, you can't literally on the screen right now, but Pisces Saturn moving through Pisces is in a blind spot to the sun, to Mercury, to Venus, to Mars, to Pluto. but it is hanging out in a decan that is associated with idealism, with sacrifice for an ideal. This is the 10 of Cups decan, where you see the book T called it the Lord of Satiety, book of Thoth called it the Lord of Perfected Success. They previously mentioned Austin Caput calls it a cup of blood in the 36 faces. Fascinating to me is that this decan speaks a lot about wild swings of emotion, from ecstasy to agony, of the lack of boundaries between our emotional selves with one another. We feel the pain of people in Minneapolis. We feel the pain of people in Venezuela. We feel the pain of people that are not related to us. We feel it very intensely. When we look to all of the ills that are unleashed onto society by Pandora's jar, part of the story of this decan, we have to figure out ways to maintain Elpis, the daimon or spirit in this decan, which translates to hope. We also have to ask ourselves, when we are visualizing the society that we want to create, when we're disappointed with the society that we have, what are we willing to sacrifice, Mars, to create that beautiful 10 of Cups reality? These are really important questions moving forward. For those of us who are, of a certain demographic, that are in the majority, like us white folks here with power, etc., we have to give up some comfort. We have to give up some of our own illusions of safety and stand up for people that don't look like us and speak out about it. We have to give up the illusion of safety. These are Pisces 3 sacrifices to be able to create that better world that we're talking about today. If we think about this from the multiple perspectives, because this isn't just one way of thinking about things, the people who are thinking about doing horrific things think that they're making sacrifices for their vision of what they want to create in the world. So it can be utilized for collective good. This energy can also be utilized for oppression, because again, everyone feels like they're the hero of their own story. So we have to kind of think about our own characters around this. Okay. So examine whether you are making a sacrifice in service of collective good, or if you're making a sacrifice in service of collective oppression. Important to think about. But there will be sacrifices that have to be made through this full moon. There are risks involved in becoming your most authentic self. There are risks involved in speaking out and speaking up for those that don't have a voice. That's part of this. So this is all filtering through Saturn in Pisces. It says you are bound to make a sacrifice for the good of the collective. Saturn is a binding agent. It says you don't have a choice. You want to be mature, you want to be an adult, you're going to have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to make a sacrifice of your comfort. You're going to have to make a sacrifice of your illusion of safety. Now, if we move forward to the moon, here we see the moon hanging out in the second 10-degree section of Leo. We talked a little bit about this through example. We talked a little bit about the third decan. But if we look at the story, let's take it through a narrative. Leo 1, 5 of Wands, where we are struggling with identity. We're struggling to utilize our spotlights and say, who do we want to be with our vitality, with our energy, with our solar light? When we get to Leo 2, we have had this victory. It's called the Lord of Victory. Austin Caput calls it a crown of laurels, where we have been able to unify our inner feelings and our outer expression. And that is the victory that is spoken towards in this crown of laurels. It is a returning home. Here we see in Aquarius 2, a leaving, a going away off into the fringe, into exile. Leo 2 is a homecoming. So how do we balance these two things? We're trying to transition into a new society, but how do we come home to our most authentic selves in the midst of those transitions and that movement from one place to another? This is really the crux of this. We've got a fixed star Acubens in this decan. Acubens, I believe, is in the constellation Cancer, which is, let me see, I'm going to look this up here. That one is it's at 13 degrees of Leo. I got to pull up my decans of Leo notes, the webinar notes. For those of you who are wondering, and I don't mean to advertise here, but I did a long series on the Decanic webinars, or I did a Decanic webinar series, and I often will reference a lot of my notes from that, because it's a consolidation of my research and wisdom up until that point. So Acubens is in Cancer, in the claw, the southern claw. It's the alpha star in Cancer, embracing the mystery of life, themes of death and resurrection, exploration of natural law. It was said to be a gatekeeper or a midwife. Sometimes it has to do with crafting family legacies. So we are midwifing or midwifery, practicing midwifery, a new reality and a new identity within the new reality. So how do we let our old selves die in a way that, and I mean metaphorically, hopefully, how do we let our old egos and our old identities, how do we cast that aside so that we can take up the mantle of the new roles that we need to play within the things that are presented to us in this moment? This moment is very different than the moment that we've lived in the past. Potentially some of these things might not have been as immediately poignant in that moment. They were always there. Maybe we weren't, as a society, ready to dismantle all of those structures. Maybe it wasn't the right cycle. This is the right cycle. This is the moment to dismantle those old narratives, identities, structures, especially when Saturn and Neptune come together. It is an important symbol for the dissolving of old structures. Think about the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 1989. We had the dissolving of a separated Germany, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the creation of something new and unified. And we had an entire country have to let go of an old identity of separation. And then we're going through a moment like that now too, okay? So who are you going to be? How can you come back to your most authentic self? And I hope that it is one based on love, one based on vitality. One of the things that I think that the Leo sun, or just the sun in general, I've been thinking a lot about through this beautiful book, Sacred Economics. I've been thinking a lot about cultures that worship the sun. And Charles Eisenstein talks about the ability, they worship the sun because of its unending generosity and ability to create life and vitality. So I think that one of the things that we really get mistaken about Leo is that it's self-centered. I don't think that that's actually the case. I think that it has the potential to be one of the most generous, life-giving, creative of places in the zodiac because of its relationship to the sun, a planet of unending, or star, I guess, of unending vitality. It gives life to everything on this planet. It gives without thought of return. You know what I'm saying? There is altruism in solar symbolism. That's if I do nothing else over the course of my life, I'm going to rehabilitate the solar symbolism to one of limitless generosity, right? Pretty mind-blowing because we've been told a different story. We've been told that this is who I am. This is my own individual identity. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. The place where your sun is where you could be unlimitedly generous with the themes of that particular sign. Okay. As a Cancer 2 sun, I have to be unlimitedly generous within the safe spaces that I create for healthy growth, right? Like my classes, my Deccan walks, things of that nature in my local community. If you have a Gemini sun, for example, you have to be unmitigatingly generous in your ability to share your ideas and communicate with others. If you have your sun in, I don't know, Libra, you can, though it's in its fall, you can be unlimitedly generous in creating balance and harmony and justice out in the world. I mean, that's where your vitality lies. That's where you feel rejuvenated and vitalized. So with the moon here, this is the way, the body, to be able to hold the light of the Aquarius sun. What do we think about? Where can we be unlimitedly generous in Aquarius? Visualizing a society that is just, visualizing a way that we can decentralize power. This is some of the themes of Aquarius: decentralization of power, laws that are taking into account the big picture rather than just an individual viewpoint. So how can you be a vehicle for that through your authenticity with the moon in Leo here? Now, the host of that is the sun in Aquarius 2. So we get kind of going back in a circle with this. Aquarius 2, we have, again, the Six of Swords. So the ability of the moon to express authenticity is collecting the light of trying to transition from one space to the other. You have to be your authentic self to facilitate movement from one shore to the next. All of you have a role to play. All of you have an authentic self lying hidden within you that needs to come into alignment with who you are out in the world. Again, I get it. It's hard sometimes to be ourselves. There's so much pressure and trauma that we feel when we aren't allowed to be ourselves, or that force us to put on a mask, that force us to put on a different face, right? I think that this full moon is a really important point where to say that if we're going to make it to the other side, we got to drop all of those edifices. We got to drop all of that disconnect. We got to be who we were meant to be. We have to get fired up. We have to be courageous to be ourselves. That's the great victory in the second decan of Leo. The courage that you dug deep for to be yourself, to speak out for what you truly believe, rather than to play nice, rather than to maintain some illusion of safety, rather than to not rock the boat. Okay, you're like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. It's not doing anyone any good. It's just keeping you in slavery and servitude to a system that doesn't care about you. And this is not just, the system doesn't just not care about the immigrants and the people of color. The system doesn't care about any of you. The system cares about perpetuating itself and perpetuating a greater and greater wealth divide and inequality. Nobody wins except for some tiny, tiny handful of people. And they don't really win. They're not winning. Do you think they're happy? Why do you think billionaires want more and more money and more power? Because those two things don't fill the emptiness that they feel in their heart. They just become more and more isolated, more and more fearful, more and more paranoid. There is no end to it. They're not winning either. They're not satisfied. Nobody wins. Everybody loses. So what do you have to do to start dismantling that whole organization and narrative around it. Now, you also might say that this is a very Uranian experience. Well, Uranus is going to be stationing direct here. So let's take some time. Before we get to that, let's take another little break. And what I'll do to end the show is I'll take you through the next couple weeks, and I'll talk about some of those ways that it's going to be unfolding. I'm going to check in with the chat first. Do me a huge favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, but also look at the link that I've shared in the beginning of the comments that I've pinned, which is a link for mutual aid societies across the United States, where you can get involved in helping to either create a mutual aid society or be able to contribute to people who are organizing to help their neighbors. That's really what that is all about. Neighbors helping neighbors, providing food for people that are in need, providing medical care and attention, providing resources for people that are in trouble. So go click on that, donate if you can, start talking to your neighbors. This morning, I had someone reached out to me. This is to me one of the greatest success stories that I feel in my life, is starting to reconnect with my neighbors. I had my 70-year-old neighbor I talk about a lot on this channel, and I'm not saying this to pump up my ego. I'm saying this as an example of something that feels really, really good. It feels so good to help somebody. I feel so fulfilled when someone reaches out for me to help them. And like this morning, my neighbor he had gotten approved for food assistance because he was having a lot of struggles with affording his home and being able to get enough to eat. I helped him apply for those benefits. And this morning he needed help. He finally got his food benefit card. He needed help setting up his PIN number, and he reached out for help. And I was able to work him through it much faster than he could have. And it felt so good. It feels good to help other people. That's the thing that you don't really understand about being of service. You gain so much from it in your own experience. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of that's amazing. That guy can eat now. That feels amazing. So when you think about generosity and helping and getting to know your neighbors, you are doing so much for your own sense of purpose and fulfillment by doing that. I can't stress that enough. It's not about trying to prove how worthy you are or how great you are. It's like you feel really good. And that feeling can't get taken away from you by any corrupt system or anything like that. It's the feeling of creating vitality through generosity. So please go do something like that today. Just go talk to your neighbors. It's so easy. If you're out for a walk or on your block, introduce yourself, say hi, and say, some wild times we're living through. How are you doing? What do you believe in? What is going on around you? How are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need anything? One of the things that they talk about in these types of gift society is ask someone else for help too, because what that does, that allows them to feel comfortable asking you for help. Don't be afraid to be helped. When I first met my neighbor over there, I asked him to help me cut up some wood. I was like, hey, do you know how to use a miter saw? As I didn't. And he came over and he brought his truck and he brought his miter saw and he cut up a bunch of pieces of wood. And, ever since then, he's hasn't been afraid to ask me for help. That's another way to get out there and to start opening the doors for these types of relationships. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Help other people, but open the door, open that relationship. I hope that will be something that you'll work through today. Devin says, Libra Sun honors and is generous with fair distribution of decisions. Perfect. See how we can apply this to any sign, the generosity of the sun. Look to your sun placement today and think about how you can be generous through that vehicle, through that, set of circumstances, set of tools. Think of the sign as a set of tools and gifts that you have to express your generosity to others. Marietta says, or maybe we need to come into alignment with the self that we hide. Very true. We have to be honest with ourselves first before we can express it out into the world. Give your old self a respectful send-off. And don't beat up yourself for the old skin that you're shedding. There are reasons why we created the ego shields that we have around us. A lot of it is from pain. A lot of it is from ananke and ignorance. You know, that's just the force that compels the world to spin, some just not knowing any better. Some of it comes from narratives that we were told that we had to believe. Some of it comes from people who maybe meant well, trying to protect us, but eventually their methods don't protect anyone anymore. So yeah, don't beat yourself up for the past person that you were, but don't hold on to it either. You know, Marietta says the beast machine eats everything and everyone. They're doing the equivalent of arranging deck chairs on the Britannica. There you go. Devin says, in the earliest days of astrology and Babylonian culture, the king or solar figure was associated with the health of the land. This means that it was important for the king to care for the land as well as care for the people. The sun is seen as a mutual reciprocal relationship. Say it louder for the people in the back, Devin. I agree 100%. We're going to rehabilitate the sun's image from the narcissism of modern astrology, right? We're going to rehabilitate that through changing that narrative in that story. All right. Trauma Raised Me says, I love helping people, but I'm in a spot where I want to be selfish with myself. My little old lady neighbor who is 80 doesn't mean to terrorize me, but she's old and lonely, and I feel bad for her. Bad for ignoring her. Well, as long as you're, you know, if you're safe, if she's making you feel unsafe, that's one thing. But maybe Marietta, and I don't know your situation, I don't know your history, but if she's terrorizing you and is racist or something like that, maybe just having a conversation with her and be like, hey, maybe bringing her a gift. I have a neighbor on one side that is kind of a ding dong, and one day he's really annoying. But one day we brought him some cookies, and like, you'd be amazed that how much he changed. I was like, hey, bud, you want a cookie? My friend, my partner just made some fresh chocolate chip cookies. Do you want one? The dude, his face just changed. He like looked like a scared puppy that had been finally treated with kindness. He just turned into like, literally, he looked like a dog that was like very like humble, you know, like scared but humble. It was weird. And I think that everyone in his life had told him he had been through the prison system and has made some difficult choices. I feel like a lot of people have told him he's just a piece of shit and that he's going to live out, that he's not capable of anything better. He's not worthy of that kindness. And when someone showed him that kindness, it's like when you have a dog that's been abused and you show them love and kindness. They're a little bit leery at first. They're a little bit cautious, but their whole being changes. And if you keep showing them that kindness, then that animal becomes healed and they start to act more in alignment with their true self, not their paranoid self. And me and him have a decent relationship now. He still does some dumb things, but like whenever we see each other, it's very friendly. Like me and his dog have a good relationship now because I did the same thing with this dog. Like I offered him treats. I said, hey, how you doing, little dog? And that's the way you heal those relationships. And I think, I don't know. Yeah, I need to stay in solitude. No, Marietta, you need to stay in community. Stay in community, friend. Neptune and Aries should help. There you go. I was referring to the Noble Knight revival. There you go. Marietta says, no, she just knocks on my door when she locks herself out, sometimes just when she's lonely. It doesn't mean harm, but I'm sensitive and reactive place right now. It's a little bit her, but mostly me. Yeah, open your heart, Marietta. It's okay to love. She's just lonely, just like you. She's just looking for connection. And you don't have to, you can have boundaries. You can have healthy boundaries. But get to know her. What's her story? You might be surprised. She might have some amazing wisdom. You know, you and her might really get along, you know, and we need each other right now. The 80-year-old little old lady next to you needs you right now. And I think you need her, you know. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to become vulnerable, but it's the way that we heal this world. Okay. Yeah. So let's take you through some of the unfolding of this, okay? So we're going to start with Uranus stationing direct, okay, on the 3rd of February. And of course, we are going to start seeing these squares with planets to Uranus, all right? The squares of Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars to Uranus into February. Now, I think it's important to talk a little bit about Taurus 3, because we've talked a little bit about Aquarius 3. Remember, Aquarius 3 is the revisiting of something temporarily to learn something, to maybe even get frustrated enough with the situation to finally leave it behind. So all of those planets are going to be channeling that energy and then coming into relationship with Uranus, a shocking planet that says, I'm going to liberate you through this lightning bolt of awareness. And it's working through Taurus 3, where we're trying to fix things that have maybe gone not the way we had hoped in the past. We're trying to deal with the weeds in the garden. We're trying to deal with the blight or the pests on the crops. We're trying to evaluate the results of our efforts in the past so that we can make better decisions moving forward. So you may be really examining your past actions, your past beliefs, your past processes, and you may be doing that so you can move on from those past processes. And you may be surprised how you finally just make a new start. You're just like, I'm just tired of doing it this way. This isn't working. We have to do something in a new way. So with Uranus stationing direct on the 3rd, you may get some new ideas about how to move forward. You may get some new ideas about how to repair something that has fallen into corruption or falling into decay. How do we keep maintaining our lives, maintaining our stories? I can't emphasize that enough today. All of our actions that we take out in the world are the result of our belief systems. Our belief systems are a result of the stories that we accept as our truth. Those can change. You change your story, you change the actions that you take out into the world. You change the story about what you believe about your neighbor, you change how you treat them. You change something inside of yourself that is afraid, scared, angry at them, and you start to change your own behavior that leads to better reciprocal relationships. If you've all been here for a number of years, I've been somewhat territorial about my space in the past, and it's a result of trauma. It's a result of never having my own little space and always feeling like I was not wanted where I was, and that it was noisy, and that I was always intruding on some space. And I brought that narrative into my life as a person who wanted very much my own little private sanctuary where I felt like I could just be myself and be quiet and connect with nature. And anything that disturbed that peace was a problem. And what that ended up happening, though, is that I was radiating disapproval. I was radiating that hatred of people disturbing my peace. And that led to relationships that were based on mistrust, and it perpetuated my lack of peace. Rather than by meeting someone with love, with acceptance, with sharing that space, it actually becomes more peaceful because you don't have to worry about like someone's negative disapproval in your space. That's how we change personally and change our beliefs and change the way that we act so that we can facilitate the changing the way that people treat us. Really important. I think Uranus and Taurus 3 is a unique opportunity to take a look and examine the way that the energy that we are putting out into the world that we can work on so that we can harmonize the way that we want to be treated out in the world, or the way that people see us or treat us out in the world. It starts with you taking personal responsibility, okay? That's the easy part. That's the part that's in your control. When you start taking actions to work on your own fears, traumas, shortcomings, you prime the pump to allow other people to treat you differently than they have in the past. That takes its own unique set of courageous things to work through. So that's the third. The first aspect that the moon is going to make is, let's see here, a sextile to Jupiter. The moon is going to be at 16 degrees of Virgo. So what I'll do is I'll put the on the outside, we'll unfold this over time. Okay. So you can see here, here's the moon in Virgo. Make it over on the 4th, it's going to be making a sextile with Jupiter. Generally, that's a positive outlay, right? In the second decan of Virgo, we have the ability to take something, an idea, and enclose it in matter. We have the ability to take a belief system, a story, an ideal, and make something real from it, okay? So this might be an opportunity to practice with this full moon who you want to be that is in alignment with your true, loving, trusting, beautiful self. And then how do you make something of that? How do you take a tangible action that helps to create community? Jupiter in Cancer 2, the second decan of Cancer, it's a beautiful opportunity to create harmonious relationships with people in your immediate community. I mean, Jupiter's doing a lot of heavy lifting with things right now. It's helping us to be more generous with people around us. It's helping us to try to bring order to our domestic spaces, to try to protect people that are vulnerable. So this might be your opportunity to do something real and tangible around that. Mercury's going to square Uranus on the 5th. Now, I go through all these aspects in greater depth in the Astrology of February 2026, so check that out. But I want to just touch on these things a little bit because we have new context. We have new information. So you could see here Mercury at 27 degrees Aquarius squaring Uranus. You might have some new ideas about how to move forward. You might have some new communications that may be shocking. You may finally just get really frustrated with your means of exchange with Mercury squaring Uranus. So this is there's going to be a pattern here. Mercury is going to go first, okay? Venus next, then the Sun, then Mars. So Mercury will ask questions. So there might be unexpected questions that come up in your life. Venus says, how do we harmonize this? How do we bring this back together? We've destabilized this. We've asked the questions. The Sun shines a big spotlight and says, all right, here's the real problem. Here's the real issue. And then with Mars making the square, here's how we take action on it. And this is a pattern that we saw with all the planets conjoining Pluto previously. Now, after the Mercury square, to me, this transition from Mercury to Pisces is a result of Mercury squaring Uranus and then saying, I can't go on like this anymore. I've got to leave this behind. As these planets move from Aquarius 3 to the first decan of Pisces, you'll see this 8 of Cups energy start to take place. This leaving behind of material success, security, just in search of a higher purpose and higher meaning. So when you start to understand, I can't keep this old story alive anymore. I have to go find my real purpose. That's when you see these planets starting to move into Pisces. Now, Venus moves and squares Uranus as well on the 8th. So this is, if we look at our chart here, we're moving forward. Here is Venus making that square to Uranus. Now, it's a little bit different energy, right? Venus is a planet that tries to harmonize things that have been separated. So we may have a really challenging time doing so. Our relationships could feel some tension around that. Or we may be actually getting liberated from an old assumption that we had within the way that we create harmony. And we may have an unexpected flash of insight and awareness that helps us to bring more beauty into the world, or to bring more harmony into the world. So it can have its positive significations as well. That brings us to the last quarter moon at 20 degrees of Scorpio on the 9th. Okay, so here's the sun at 20 degrees of Aquarius and the moon around 20 degrees of Scorpio. This last quarter moon, I guess to just be really brief about it, the sun is attempting to move on, like the Seven of Swords card in third decan of Aquarius. The third decan of Scorpio shows us the Seven of Cups, which is a card that speaks towards the illusions that we try to uphold to keep something dead alive, keep a form that is no longer vital going, that doesn't bring us any joy, any life, but we try to keep it, we try to prop it up. When the moon is waning in that decan, we're releasing our illusions. We're releasing the attempts to uphold a story that doesn't serve us anymore. So this last quarter moon, I think, is going to be really powerful for letting go of your illusions of separation, your illusions that you are alone in this world and that your actions only affect you rather than other people. You're letting go of the illusion that might makes right, the illusion that you're safe if you just hide behind your power, your privilege, your wealth, your belief of superiority. All of those things, they're not going to protect you anymore, if they ever did. It's an opportunity to release those old narratives, a really powerful one. So last quarter moon, I'm looking forward to that one. Venus moves into Pisces the day after on the 10th. So here is February the 10th, Venus moving into Pisces. This is probably every time a planet is moving into Pisces, it goes from an aversion relationship to Saturn, one where it is not able to receive the things that it needs, to a trine with an exalted Jupiter. Now that is an improvement of the host of a planet. Now the challenge is still that Jupiter is still retrograde, so there may be some delays in getting what we need from that. But from the date to really keep in mind is March the 10th, when Jupiter stations direct. Then we're going to have an exalted Jupiter direct, able to do all of these wonderful things moving forward. So when we see these planets move into Pisces, we're getting prepared for that moment. Venus moving into Pisces is Venus's exaltation, where we start to really see that I am you and you are me and we are all together. That there are these boundaries that separate us are merely illusions. They're merely shimmers on the surface of the water, right? Appreciate beauty when Venus moves into Pisces. Appreciate beauty all the time, but it may be easier to do so when Venus is in Pisces. It may be easier to practice empathy. Empathy is not a weakness. Empathy is a strength. People who have empathy are strong individuals. And if you have empathy, if you're feeling things deeply right now, you have strength within you. Utilize it. Turn that empathy into action. Turn that empathy into protection. I think that Venus is going to help facilitate some of that when it moves into Pisces. On the 11th, we see Mercury starting to move into its retrograde story, right? We have it emerging as the morning star on the 11th, okay? Actually, let me fix this real quick. There we go. So Mercury's going to emerge as the morning star at 7 degrees of Pisces, and then it is going to enter its retrograde shadow at 8 degrees Pisces, and then conjoin the North Node on the 12th. So emerging as the morning star, a message that could be very powerful, a message that can show you what you might be searching for right? As far as higher meaning and purpose. It may help you to understand the old stories that you are trying to uphold in a society that doesn't work with those old stories. When it enters its retrograde shadow, then we're entering a place where we're going to return back to with the Mercury retrograde that's happening at the end of February. So pay attention to messages that you receive around the 10th and 11th, because it might be challenging your sense of self, your sense of belief around that you've shaped your reality around. It's an opportunity to reshape the narratives around the reality that you are creating. A really big transit that we have coming up is Saturn moving into Aries on the 13th. So here's Saturn moving out of Pisces and into Aries, 13th and the 14th here, and immediately starting to conjoin Neptune. So this is Saturn moving out of Jupiter's house, hosted by that exalted Jupiter, and into Aries in its fall, hosted by Mars in Aquarius. So this is a big transit. This is one, again, I don't want to be a fear monger, but this is one that the symbolism does speak towards ruthlessness in leadership. It speaks towards a desire for expansion of colonial power. It speaks towards laws that are created that serve only individuals rather than taking into account the needs of the many. It also, on a personal level, could bind us. Remember, we talked about Saturn as a binding agent, bind us to having to make a new start. If we acknowledge the axe in the room, right, which is a symbol that Austin talks about with Aries 1. If we acknowledge that axe in the room, the potential for collateral damage that he talks about, the potential for wielding power indiscriminately, we can also look at it from another perspective where we will be tasked with probably making new starts, where it's not time to really necessarily visualize anymore. It's time to take action. It's time to plant new seeds for whatever new society that we want to work through. I think that the contact with Neptune, I'm nervous about it for a couple of reasons. I mean, Neptune, I think of as a solvent. It dissolves structures, so we're probably seeing the dissolving of structures. There's a lot of noise around territorial shifts. You know, I've read a story about the desire of Alberta to secede from the Canadian Union. I don't know what's going on there. We've had all the blustering about Greenland. We've had all sorts of other things going on in the collective. I think life could look very different after this conjunction. I will also say too, though, that Neptune tends, from what I've read from Liz Green and her beautiful book on Neptune, it also speaks to a bit of a mass psychosis, something where we can get swept up in a mass movement that seems very, very important at the beginning of the Neptune cycle, but then is revealed to be a little bit of an illusion by the end of it. And I think that we have to be a little bit careful about getting swept up into violence. We have to be careful about getting swept up into a might makes right or individual type of consciousness where we think that, well, we have to rely on our own resources. We have to bunker up or something like that. Like, I mean, that to me is the ultimate illusion. We've been spending a lot of time today talking about how that's really not how anything else in nature works. Everything in nature is relationship. You know, even our bodies are just a series of relationships with atoms. And, you know, it's really quite remarkable if you think about it in that regard. So I would encourage you to think and to really hold space for relationship when Saturn and Neptune are conjoining in Aries, because even with that archetype, we are still in relationship. Think about Aries in nature. Aries is associated in the northern hemisphere with the yang energy of an atom splitting in cellular mitosis, or a seed but bursting through its husk and bursting through the soil to expand. the seed has a relationship with the soil. The seed has a relationship with the sun, with the air, with the moisture in the soil. It's still part of a relationship. It's just this kind of forceful energy to begin to branch out into more interconnected relationships with the things around it. So if you think about it from that perspective, Saturn in Aries says you don't have a choice but to begin to think about your place in interconnected reality. And you might have to be a little bit forceful in starting to build those relationships, right? I think that there's always ways to contextualize some of these challenging astrological things in a way that can be productive, in ways that can be in service of the more beautiful world that we know is possible. So Saturn in Aries can be challenging for our sense of discipline too. I think that the other thing to watch out for with that is we might feel like we have to do everything all at once, all the time, right now. It may be a little bit challenging to have that sense of delayed gratification. So I think it's important to not get swept up in the, I have to do everything right now, right this second. You know, Saturn is still Saturn. Saturn still says this is going to be the result of effort over time. So even if you're trying to start something new, you have to be careful not to burn yourself out by just getting all adrenalized about it. Okay. This is part of what I was experiencing this week. I was getting a lot of notifications from people in the community around being witnesses for the newly accelerated ice presence in our community. And I had to kind of pace myself. I had to say, I can't respond to every single one of these things. It's not even my job to do that. I have to pace myself. I have to figure out where my energy is most useful. And then I have to kind of have some space. And that's, I think, going to be equally as true when we see Saturn in Aries too, as well. Okay, so pace yourself with Saturn in Aries. You probably will have to make a new start, but Aries has its place. Aries energy has its usefulness. Sometimes it's very easy to get stuck in the old way of doing something. And sometimes we just have to say, fuck it, I got to do this. There's no more visioning. There's no more questioning. I just have to take an action. And even if it's not the perfect action, it will get the process started. It will get the ball rolling. And then you can refine it as you move forward. Sun squares Uranus on the 16th. So here's the Sun-Uranus square. We've been talking about revisioning the sun as a place of generosity, as a place for you to have limitless amount of vitality towards the energy that you find yourself in. This might be something where you have unexpected vitality to leave something behind, right? Unexpected vitality to revisit something from your past, untie its karmic knot, and take a leap into the unknown. The sun also has some traditional significations with leadership, with kings, etc. And I think that this could also be leading towards some unexpected events for people in power and leadership. But I think that the main thing I see with this is an awareness of what needs to change. To me, the sun is a big spotlight. It shines its light on things. So we might become, I don't know, painfully or joyfully aware of something that needs to change in our life or something that we need to fix. So that's what we've got going on with the 16th. And that builds us to the new moon solar eclipse the next day on the 17th, right? We're at about 28 degrees of Aquarius. We're going to do a whole live stream on this. But as you can see, this eclipse is really in a tight square to Uranus. So we have a really, really tight aspect between, I mean, it's separating, but it's, the day before it's making that square. Mars is co-present. Venus isn't part of the mix anymore with this particular lunation. And Mars and Pluto are still there. And this will be the first Aquarius, new moon that we've had in the last however many years with Saturn in Aries, if I'm not mistaken. If we didn't have a preview of it last year, I don't believe that we did. But it's a powerful moment because Saturn and Neptune are at the 0 Aries degree point. It's going to be hosted by that, all of that energy that we just talked about with Saturn and Aries. Those are the biggest features here with this. Again, I'll break that down in great depth, but I think that this is an important beginning of a dismantling of something old, of something that isn't working anymore. And it's bringing us a frustration around that too. And it's prepping us for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the 20th of February, which again has the energy of building something new, but also dissolving something old. I've been nervous about the possibility of our corrupt government trying to institute something like martial law. I hope that that's not what this means. I think it is a possibility. I guess what I would advise, my hope, is that when we're faced with some of the tyranny that we're experiencing, that we're able to maintain our cool heads. And I say this not out of cowardice or weakness. I say this out of, I think, a hope that if we maintain our ability to push back in resistance in a way that doesn't escalate the violence, we are able to, I hope, avoid the institution of something like martial law. Now, I know that that's might be naive, it might be too idealistic, but I have found in my relationships with, let's see, Devin says, sorry, but this is the evening star shadow. Oh, did I mess something up? I'll have to go back and look at that. Let me finish this thought and I'll go back and look at that, Devin. I have dealt with situations in my life where I have been under the boot of an oppressive force. Whether that was a relationship where the power dynamic was not equal, where I had to be in relationship with someone who did not have my best interests in mind and also had great power over me, and was also very violent and escalatory in that violence. What I learned from that experience is that when I returned that violence, it escalated even further. When you're dealing with powers that are corrupt and that are narcissistic in nature, if you keep escalating, there's no end to it. If you keep your cool and you keep your facts straight, you keep your sense of stability through that, eventually there will be opportunities to push back, right? And this may be just my own situation, but I really truly believe that in these situations, we're going to have to maintain our cool. We're going to have to do all the things necessary to push back on oppressive and authoritarian power. But you have to do so in a way that doesn't escalate, that allows the state power to put the clamps down even further on people's rights. Okay? So I think that that's my advice with this, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. If we want to avoid something like giving an authoritarian regime the excuse to institute something like martial law, we have to maintain our composure. That doesn't mean that they won't try it. That doesn't mean that they won't even agitate to be able to assert it. But it means that we shouldn't make it easy for them to do so, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's the last aspect I had to discuss today. I'm just going back and looking through the chat. And we'll do an animal and we'll do an I-Ching. And then we'll wrap for the day. Let me see. We've got some nice comments coming in. Let's see. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, Marietta says. Yes. Let's see. Devin was talking about the shadow, evening star shadow. Did I say morning star? Oh, did I? Maybe I did that. Maybe that's what I did. Retrograde shadow. Oh, okay. That's right. And maybe it wasn't retrograde. Oh, I don't know. I'm I'm sorry if I confused things there, Devin. I don't know if I have the juice left to unpack all of it, but hopefully you've gained some benefit from what we've done today. Oh, I was saying morning star. Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that. So yes, it is in its evening star phase rather than morning star. I think I'm just running on instinct at this point. So thank you for that correction. Appreciate that. Let's see. We've got some nice biblical verses from Marietta here. It says in the Bible, the disciples asked Jesus who to follow. He tells them to find the man carrying the pitcher of water and follow them into that house. There's a lot of astro-theological quotes like that in there. I like how you don't try to tell the future with astro tarot, but you read the frequency of the season we're entering. There you go. Yeah, I'm glad that resonates with you, and I'm glad that you're finding some connections with your own spiritual tradition with that as well, Marietta. There's so many ways to see it through so many different lenses of different theological practices that we might be connected to, and I think that there's a lot of truth throughout all of those different ways of practicing. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Painted Turtle, Lauren says, many planets in Pisces in February, reminding Neptune of its highest generational potential, and with Saturn joining both planets, righteous obligation to long-standing peace, patience, and understanding. I love it. Let's hope we can maintain that type of energy moving forward into February. There's probably going to be some rocky things going on. The Mars Uranus square that happens at the end of February, beginning of, let's see, when is that? That I didn't talk about that today, but you can go back in February and look at that. But that is perfecting on February 26th and 27th. I mean, that's right directly opposed the president's natal Mars. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on with that. It's at 27 degrees Aquarius. It's opposing Mars at 26 Leo in DJT's chart. So another one to keep an eye on as far as changes in that situation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the hexagram here before we wrap for the day. So here is our hexagram. What is the essence of the full moon in Leo 2 in 2026? We got the hexagram 53. And 53 translates to developing gradually, right? Let's put this up here. There we go. Developing gradually. Slow, steady development, progressing step by step, faithfulness, persistence. It's changing to the hexagram 57, gentle influence. Notice a theme here? Patience, developing gradually, gentle with our influence, okay? Let's see. This hexagram, I'm reading from Jack Balkin, is symbolized by a tree growing slowly on a mountain. Gen, or this hexagram, stands for the calmness and inner tranquility. It is gentle but insistent penetration. Slowly but surely, the trunk and branches of the tree penetrate upward towards the sky, while its roots penetrate deep into the soil. The higher its branches spread, the more widely and deeply its roots reach. In this way, the gradual development of the tree produces balance and stability. By contrast, a plant that grows too quickly is easily uprooted. A basic theme of this hexagram is that calmness, balanced growth, and gentle and slow persistence are characteristics necessary for successful gradual development. Another symbol often associated with this hexagram is the wild goose. Wild geese were thought to mate for life and hence were symbols of faithfulness, patience, and endurance in relationships. The need for such qualities is the hexagram's second major theme. So there's a judgment that says gradual advancement. The maiden is given in marriage good fortune. It is beneficial to persevere. This is a promise of future success, but you must allow the situation to develop gradually in order to realize it. The Book of Changes compares the situation to a long period of courtship, betrothal, and engagement. The parties must get to know each other and develop bonds of shared commitment and trust to accompany bonds of initial attraction. The couple's families must be brought together. Plans must be established. Ritual formalities must be observed. All of these things take time. What is true of marriage is true of all other forms of courtship and persuasion. If you are trying to get other people to make a major commitment or to do something important, don't expect them to be convinced overnight. You must be considerate and allow them to move towards the decision gradually after they have obtained the requisite level of trust and confidence. Now, I will admit, friends, I made this mistake yesterday. I was trying to teach my poor Taurus rising father about the concept of externalities that we have discussed at great length today. And if you arrive late, go back and re-listen to it. I was very intent about it. I wasn't taking no for an answer. And eventually he reached his point where he couldn't absorb any more information. And I have done this to my poor accommodating father for many, many years. We do have to allow people to digest the things we're trying to share with them. I think if we push people too hard, too fast, especially when we're thinking of like completely new ways of reorganizing society and belief systems and stories, we can be persistent and we can't let them off the hook, but we don't want to cram it so forcefully down their throats that they just like vomit it back up and don't accept it as the nourishment that it actually could be. Do you see what I'm saying? We put the plate on their table and say, here is a gift for you. I hope that you will partake of this nourishment, rather than, I want you to be healthy. Here's an apple. Just shove it in their mouth and choke them. Like, it's hard because when we get intense and we get passionate and when we are scared, we want people to believe what we are sharing that could be different. What that came from for me yesterday when I was ruthless with my own father, I was scared. You know what I was scared about? I was mostly scared for my partner. I was mostly scared for my mixed race partner, who could at any point just be picked up off the street because she's being racially profiled by a corrupt mercenary force of the government. That's where that came from. It was fear. It was protection. It was anger. It was sadness. And when we realize that those emotions are coming from those places, and that was the most visceral part. It was also building over time, seeing this stuff happen to my neighbors and my community members over the course of my entire life too, but it coming to a peak and a point. But we have to be able to offer this nourishment to people, the nourishment of community, of the story of connection, rather than the story of separation, without choking them on it. And I think that this is what this hexagram is really speaking to. Okay. And there's a changing line. It says 6 at the second place. The wild goose gradually approaches the cliff, eating and drinking in joy and contentment, good fortune. For a wild goose, the cliff is safer than the shore. So we've had shore elements in the tarot associated with Aquarius too. Eating and drinking in joy and contentment symbolizes generosity and concord as well as enjoyment. For the wild goose signals to others when it has found food. And we have this food metaphor. After initial difficulties, you have reached a more secure position. You now see the way forward and you realize that you could make steady progress. Thus, you can afford to be more confident and relaxed. At this stage of your development, you have reason to be optimistic. This is a time of peace and harmony in which you can share your good fortune with others. Doing so will increase your happiness. We talked about that earlier today. Sharing with somebody, just dissolving the mistrust by being the initiatory force that reaches out to someone. Changing your behavior can be the catalyst that changes the way that you are treated with other people. This is changing to hexagram 57, gentle influence. Also translates to humility, gentleness, wind, persistence. This hexagram speaks towards that the best way to affect a situation is through gentle, persistent action and subtle forms of influence. The text compares the right way of proceeding to that of wind. A mild breeze seems inconspicuous, but it can penetrate everywhere. Its effects are gradual, but are considerable over time. It is delightful and unassuming. Therefore, it is not feared or resisted, but is gladly and gratefully accepted. And because it is accepted, it has influence. The key is to be both gentle and persistent. A violent or forceful approach will be counterproductive and meet with rebuff, but a gentle approach will be more readily received, and if you are persistent, you will eventually have the right effect. Because you can only influence situations in subtle ways, clarity and single-mindedness of purpose are essential. If you are uncertain about what you want, or if you are wasting time pursuing multiple or conflicting ends, your message will be dissipated and you will have no influence at all. Therefore, you must be absolutely clear in your mind what your goals are. Define your objectives and stick to them. The wind is most powerful when it blows in only one direction. You will not change the situation all at once, but only through steady and persistent influence. And you have to take care of your nervous system to do so. You can't burn yourself out on just a forceful and premature show of force, right, in a situation. That's not what the I-Ching is saying. This is more so about showing up each day and doing the little things, okay? It says, you restrain any impulsive tendencies. Be patient and flexible. Adjust to the changing circumstances rather than fighting them, and continually look for opportunities to persuade and win people over to your side. Under no circumstances should you act aggressively or try to dominate the situation. That will surely backfire, right? Remember when I talked about when Saturn and Neptune are coming together, if we go off and we aggressively engage with oppressive forces that would love nothing more than for that to happen, you are actually accelerating their oppression, okay? But if you go out there and you persistently, gently defend people in your community, you show up time and time again, that has the long-term effect that we're looking for here, rather than the opposite effect of accelerating our oppression. Under no circumstance should you act aggressively or try to dominate the situation. That will surely backfire. Instead, let others take the lead. Stay in the background and serve them. You will make the most progress by subordinating yourself and making your presence felt in small but significant ways. I would say subordinating is more about subordinating yourself to the cause, subordinating yourself to the vision. Realizing that this is not a battle that's going to be won overnight. This isn't something where one action is going to lead to the whole system changing. That small, persistent actions coordinated with others will be the way forward. So I love the I-Ching. It really is just very poignant. I'm going to check in with the chat, and then we'll talk about the animal here. Let's see. Lauren says, I think that aspect is probably going after churches as asylum for ICE. That kite at the top of the theme mundi is forming. Once Uranus goes into Gemini to alter sanctuary law. Okay, something to watch for. Concerted effort requires to keep all people safe in these difficult astrological aspects, challenging what it means to embody divine protection. Home, love, and safety is required to ever become fully human. Yeah. Concerted effort over time, I think, is what this I-Ching is talking about. Gentle movements. The gentle movement we took the other day was meeting up with some of our neighbors and receiving whistles so that we could alert people to the presence of ICE in our neighborhood. You know what I saw when I looked into the faces of those people? They were scared. They didn't know what they were doing. But they knew that they were taking a small action to work together with other people to protect the people that they cared about in their community. And that's all you need to do at this point. Take those small steps. Take those tiny micro movements towards building the better, more interconnected world and society that will benefit everybody, really. It's going to benefit the lost souls that have fallen victim to greed and separation as well. They're not happy. They're not happy. They're scared and they are traumatized, and they are exerting that shadow onto everyone else. I think that they will never find satisfaction within that. So how do we help heal the collective, right? The whole system, so that everyone can have the benefit of that healing? Okay. The animal I got for you was interesting. I got the squirrel monkey. So here is the squirrel monkey. Look at his inquisitive little face. I love this one. I think we have to use our ingenuity, right? I'm going to read you a little bit about the squirrel monkey from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. Squirrel monkey symbolizes balance, working in a group, and leaping over obstacles. Squirrel monkey doesn't have a prehensile tail, which means it can't use its tail to hang from branches or hold objects. Instead, it uses it for balance. Squirrel monkey is a social animal that lives in groups of 12 to 100 individuals. It can usually leap over 8 feet, but has been known to leap up to 20 feet. This means that you work well in a group atmosphere and are able to balance work and your home life and to overcome obstacles with ease. It has talents for acrobatics, cleverness, communication, community, curiosity, emotions, feelings, games, gentleness, imaginative, ingenuity, intelligence, loving, mischievous, playful, protective, resourceful, speed, and understanding. It has some challenges around getting easily bored, overly chatty, reactive, or unpredictable. When squirrel monkey appears, it means to connect to your senses in a deeper, more intuitive way. Instead of just looking, see with your clairvoyance. Instead of just hearing, listen with clairaudience. Squirrel monkey means that you have the ability to travel between worlds. Aquarius 2. It lives between earth and sky, in the middle part of the tops of trees. Because of its small size, it rarely goes to the treetops or down to the earth. Liminal space, right? Where was I? Rarely goes down to the place. Let's see. I lost my place. This means that you have the ability to travel between worlds and are a medium that can connect with those who have passed to the other side. Squirrel monkey reminds you to keep balance between these realms. It is easy to get drawn into communication with the other side so much that you ignore the human existence that you're living in. Squirrel monkey uses its tail and feet to keep it stabilized and balanced on the branches of trees. It urges you to maintain the same sense of balance when you're moving between worlds. Squirrel monkey urges you to look at all sides from multiple points of view before making decisions about something. Squirrel monkey agilely moves from tree to tree by twisting, turning, and hanging and jumping. It is quite acrobatic, and it's this constant changing motion that gives it the ability to see all sides of a situation. When it arrives at its destination, it will sit and look around, seeing everything before deciding to stay put or continue on. This is the same lesson for you. Look at and see everything before you decide anything. Change your perspective to get a clearer vision of what's happening around you. This animal will assist you when you need to keep quiet. Squirrel monkey makes very little noise even though it moves through the forest canopy at fast speeds. When a warning call is given, the females and youth get very still and quiet while the males check things out. If you're studying a new topic, squirrel monkey can help you remember the material. It has one of the largest brains compared to its body size and is the cleverest. If you're unsure where you're headed in life, if you feel lost or stuck in the past, squirrel monkey can show you how to move forward and the best future route to take. It encourages you never to give up. Stay focused on your destination and move with graceful ease until you get where you want to go. All right. I mean, really, it echoes the ingenuity that we see in Aquarius 2, that where the sun and where Venus are in this lunation, it symbolizes being able to see things from that higher vantage point, to be able to navigate liminal spaces. I think curiosity is a really important quality to bring into our interactions right now. Ask questions of the people in your communities. Ask questions of people that you disagree with. Eventually, there might be a stopping point where you have to say, well, this is kind of, we're going to have to agree to disagree. But get curious about where they're coming from, too. I think that's really the way forward with this. Like, it's going to take everybody kind of coming on board with a shared sense of purpose rather than a sense of separation. At the end of the day, we are all facing extinction on this planet from a world that needs to band together to organize and cooperate with one another to sustain our ability to maintain life on this planet. At the end of the day, that really is, it hopefully becomes a unifying force. All of this other stuff is just distraction. It's a few bad actors over time that have been incentivized to make these wealth grabs. But I think at the end of the day, if we just start seeing things through the lens of interconnectivity, we see things through a shared sense of purpose of sustaining life on the planet, that really dissolves a lot of the mistrust and boundaries between people. And I think Squirrel Monkey is a great way to engage with that. Okay, friends, I think that's what I've got for you today. We're coming in at 3 hours here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of your honesty. Appreciate you sharing your stories and your perspectives, whether it's through your spiritual tradition, through your wisdom that comes from that, whether it's through sharing your story of your experience in the place that you live and seeing how we can find and build bridges between those experiences, whether it's through sharing the things that you're both excited for and that you're afraid about. All of those things help us to understand each other and to understand things from the different lenses and perspectives that are necessary to create a beautiful, interconnected ecosystem of life that is sustainable to one another. We're all sharing this beautiful planet together. You start watching some nature documentaries and you just start to get your mind blown at the interconnectedness of things. And we're a part of that. We're not separated from it. And once we start remembering what we've forgotten as far as our interconnectedness with the rest of the planet, with each other, with nature, with the oceans, with the land, with the trees, it's going to be so much easier to take those actions that are based on that belief system rather than the old story of separation that's led us to this moment of pain, of scarcity, of fear, and of trauma. So I hope that you'll sit with some of those ideas. I hope that you'll continue to meditate to get clear on what your role might be as far as adding good vibes to the collective and taking action to support the people in your community. And I just want to thank all of you for being here today. Thank you for being an awesome community, a loving and kind one that is really concerned for each other's well-being. Thank you for being an international community, a global community. It really is so heartening to me that our friends from across the pond keep stopping in. Like it really means a lot to me. And I want to keep hearing your stories. Okay. I want to keep hearing what all is going on with you. So hang in there. Take your time. Gentle persistence. Be brave. Be courageous. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be foolhardy, but it means that you do need to sometimes do some things that are outside of your comfort zone. And we'll get through this together. Like, this too shall pass. These are part of a much larger cycle. There is beauty on this planet. There is hope for all of these things. Sometimes there's growing pains too. And this might be a point in time where we're experiencing a little bit of growing pains. But don't lose hope. Keep your vision on the love that you feel for the people in your life and for the planet itself. And we'll get through it together. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. I love all of you. Take care. Thank you so much for all of this. Thank you for all of your wonderful comments. Appreciate all of you. And we'll see you the next time. Take care. Peace.